You're listening to the Joel Martin Mastery Podcast, home of the 2-hour deep dive interview with gold, platinum, and multi-platinum bands, including Stained, Blue Rodeo, The Arkells, Finger 11, Big Wreck, Moist, Bedouin Soundclash, I Mother Earth, Ill Scarlet, Neverending White Lights, Thornley, and many more. Please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast as well as share, comment, and like. Now let's dive in to today's episode. Welcome, everyone, to today's episode of the podcast. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. We are joined by a very special guest. She's achieved a level of mastery as a singer-songwriter, and she's also the lead singer of the supergroup Envy of None, which also features Alex Lifeson of Rush, Andy Curran of Coney Hatch, and recording engineer Alf Annabellini. So welcome to the podcast, Maiah, Wynne. Maiah, how are you? And have you been feeling the love from Canadians over the last year? As the other three members of Envy of None, those are beloved Canadian boys.
Yeah, I definitely have. I feel like, and I had the chance to go to Toronto a few times now, and it's just been an incredible experience, but especially online and in person. I've actually met a lot of Canadians in the States who love Envy of None and love the project. And I feel the love all over the place.
Amazing. I started the interview with that question because there was a fan question sent in from Serge Menard, and he asked, how does it feel being the lone US-born member of Envy of None, and have you found that Canadian fans have really embraced you?
I kind of like being the odd one out. I'm kind of the odd one out in a lot of ways. You know, I'm sort of random Portland girl who's way younger than everybody else and sort of just random, but it really happened naturally. I was actually on a Zoom call with Andy. He was mentoring me as sort of this prize that I won. So he really right away kind of took this sort of mentorship role, and those guys have really just sort of taken me under their wings, and it's been really fun to work with them and exciting. And everybody else who's been following the band and who are fans of the band have been really supportive. Canadians and everywhere else have been incredibly supportive, and so I feel lucky, and I kind of like being the little odd duck in the group.
You're hashtag blessed.
Yeah.
That's funny. So that you kind of shared a little bit of the origin story of Envy of None, how you guys came together as a group. We're going to do a full 2-hour deep dive. So we're going to work our way all the way up to Envy of None, and we'll get started all the way at the beginning. So before we get to that, I always like to share with our listeners how the guests and I ended up here today. So it shows the importance of networking, which is huge in the music industry, of building community, of fostering relationships. So in our case, I've had your good friend and bandmate, Alf Annabellini, on the podcast. I've done 2 separate 2-hour interviews with him back on episodes 56 and 85. And I mentioned to you, I go way back with Alf. Let's see how long ago. I go back about a decade with Alf, and I worked with him at Metalworks, which is the #1 recording studio in Canada. So I knew him long before the Envy of None fame came along. You know, I'm a diehard Alf fan from the start. So because of those 2 episodes, you know, I do my job of promoting and editing clips and getting it out and tagging the right people. So those interviews ended up in your universe, and then the 2 of us ended up kind of connecting a little bit. And Alf, you know, I always ask my guests if they can recommend someone that would make for an amazing upcoming guest. And Alf said, you got to get Maiah on. She would be awesome. Aww. And here we are today.
That's so great. It really, it came so naturally, and Alf is so sweet. He's always talking me up and helping me get more interviews, which I love.
He's your Flava Flav. He's your hype. Yeah. He's your hype man. And
I met Flava Flav in an airplane once, and he was wearing his clock.
I was gonna ask, casually off camera, was he wearing his clock?
He was.
I guess he must sleep and bathe with that clock.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And you know, I wanted to kick this interview off powerfully, and the only way to do that properly was to reach out to Alf, and Alf shared some kind words. So this is what Alf has to say about one Maiah Wynne. Alf says, Maiah, wise and talented beyond her years, ever thoughtful, and our muse. I'm forever grateful to have her as a friend and musical partner. She makes us all better. So that's from Alf.
That's so sweet. I feel the same about Alf. That's so sweet. Those
He's
guys
he
have been so sweet, just like lifting me up all the time. Like my confidence has just gone so much better just working with these guys. They just make me feel so good about myself.
Yeah, I don't want to ruin his like rock star image, but Alf is a big sweetie. I mean,
He is.
that's a sweet man that
Yeah.
you want on your team for sure. So let's take it all the way back to the beginning. And you know, people see you now and you're super successful with both the solo career and Envy of None, but it's been a long journey. It's a lot of hard work and dedication and having a long-term vision and setting goals and all those things. So let's go all the way back to the beginning. Where does this love of music come from? And is there maybe an earliest musical memory that jumps out at you?
Ooh, yes. I have a really early memory with music. It was always something that I was drawn to. My dad played the piano growing up, and so we had a piano in the house. And I remember at 3 years old or 4 years old, sort of plucking on the keys and finding two notes that sounded good together, sort of making my first chord, and getting really excited about it and remembering those two notes so the next day I could come down and play the same notes again, and knowing that they sounded good together. And just that feeling, I still get that feeling now, finding chords and getting excited about it and finding notes that sound good together in unique ways. And it just like elicits this, I don't know, this internal simple joy inside of me of music and creating, and it's always been the creating side for me. I think is making the sound and making chords and creating things, and um I just love it so much. Yeah.
So at 3 years old, you start playing around, plucking notes. At what age did you start to get a little more serious about learning how to actually play the piano? Was there music lessons? Where does that start?
Yeah, I on pretty much all instruments I'm self-taught except for the piano. I had piano lessons from around age 4 to like age 9. Um, and even then I was really interested in I loved piano lessons. I think there are kids who are forced to go to piano lessons and they kind of resent it and they're like, I don't really want to do this. But I loved it. I loved piano lessons. I loved going and learning. And even at like age 6, I remember my piano teacher working with me and I was writing my first songs and writing out the notation. And I have this memory of going to a recital, and I had written a song, but I was so young and still new to everything. I knew that I didn't know what I had written and I couldn't read what I had written. And so I just made up a bunch of stuff and during the recital in front of everybody for like 5 minutes. And then everybody clapped and was amazed that I wrote this song. But it was always that I loved the piano, and it was my first love, my first instrument love, and it's my favorite instrument.
And at what point do the other instruments come in? So I know there's guitar, I believe there's ukulele. When does the singing come in, the songwriting, all that? I'm just looking for a little timeline to see the growth here.
Yeah. Yeah, I started to teach myself mandolin first because my grandpa plays the mandolin and the banjo. And so he got me a mandolin. I started to teach myself that. And then my dad had this really old classical guitar that he never learned how to play. And so I'd come home from school when nobody else was home and I'd go and sneak and steal it and practice on it and learn. And I taught myself the drums, like a drum kit when I was 13. I really wanted the drum kit for my birthday, and my Christmas and my birthday are kind of really close. So it was my big birthday Christmas present was a drum kit when I was 13. And so I remember I was listening to Red Hot Chili Peppers. I was playing Guitar Hero. So lots of like classic rock was on my iPod at that point, and I would go and jam out and play the drums. And it was just a kind of a natural progression of all of these different influences, rock music influencing my drumming. And then I was listening to a lot of indie folk music. And so that was sort of inspiring me to learn the guitar. And then my grandpa is a big bluegrass musician. And so that was sort of inspiring me to learn to play the mandolin, and all these different things. Sort of everything was so inspiring to me. I didn't care what genre it was all amazing and exciting. And I kind of became addicted to learning new instruments. And so I kept going from there, and ended up buying a ukulele, and then I taught myself how to play the dulcimer and then the banjo, and then you know, so on and so on. And now I have like 80 instruments and I can't stop.
There's never enough, right?
Yeah.
It's like a guitarist has to have like 20 guitars. I mean, I need all of them and
Yeah.
they all do something different.
Exactly.
I feel like your grandpa would be a lot of fun at parties playing the banjo and mandolin.
Yeah, yeah. He's got the long hair, very hippie, bluegrass grandpa.
That's amazing. So you mentioned some Guitar Hero. You know, I remember the Guitar Hero craze. I actually I have two young nieces and they started to show a little interest in video games. So I had, you know, all the different consoles. So I actually gave them my Xbox 360 with a Guitar Hero guitar and with all the Guitar Hero games. So I did my part as an
Nice.
uncle to initiate them into that world. And I wouldn't be doing my job here on this podcast if I didn't have some insider information about you playing Guitar Hero. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
So I went right to the source and I have a quote from your mom. Can you believe it? I have a quote from your mom.
No.
She says, Maiah has always been a talented kid, especially when it came to music. She would come home after school and play the piano for hours, incorporating what she had learned in piano lessons and also from watching others play on YouTube. She was also really coordinated and amazing at Guitar Hero. I recall her playing Guitar Hero in the YMCA recreation room as a 12-year-old girl. She was blowing the high school boys away with her guitar playing. When I got her a drum kit, I remember showing her videos of Neil Peart playing. It's so fun that she is now in a band with Alex Lifeson. The Rush connection runs deep. A quote from your mom. How about that? Right to the source. You don't know what's about to happen here today.
I'm impressed. I'm very impressed. You do your homework.
I do. I infiltrated the home base there, and I got a quote. So, who would you say were the piano players, like for your first couple instruments, your piano players and your guitarists? Who inspired? You're still laughing from that quote.
What? My mom texted me. She's like, "Oh, good luck with your interview." I should have known. There's something sneaky.
Why does she know when interviews are starting and finishing? She was actually promoting this interview on her social media as well. So, so thank you, Mom. Who would you say are the piano players and the guitarists that inspired you when you first started playing? Were you looking and seeing these amazing players and saying, okay, well, I'm at this level and there's clearly a gap in talent to these world-class people? Anyone inspire you to be better in practice?
Definitely. I think for piano, definitely Nora Jones. I know she's not really thought of a lot as a pianist, but she's an incredible pianist and she's an incredible vocalist as well, obviously. And I used to listen to Come Away With Me on repeat for so many years.
The album or the song?
The album.
Yeah. Okay.
It's such a great album. And I was just always really inspired by her in general. She inspired me vocally too. But I think for piano, it's really her. And then my dad playing the piano inspired me a lot. I would watch him. I'm a really visual learner. And so I remember sitting and just watching him play and memorizing what his hands were doing and then repeating it. And then as far as guitar, it's funny because it's like I listened to a lot of music growing up, but I never really thought specifically about, oh, this musician is really talented and I want to learn from this person. But it was really the people that were surrounding me that influenced me the most. And so I actually have my great uncle is a classical guitarist, Ralph Towner. And he's toured all around the world. He's incredibly talented, one of the best classical guitar players around and composers. And I've only met him once, but I did a whole school project on him because I was so fascinated to know there was this other musician in my family, you know, and that was really exciting for me and inspired me more than anything to have that sort of connection with this person and to know that I wasn't such a black sheep after all. You know, there's this other person that was crazy enough to follow music as a path in life and succeeded, and I'm somewhat related to this person. So yeah, that really inspired me a lot, and he is incredibly talented.
I feel like between your grandpa and your, I think, great uncle, you said, like, how is there no family band there? I mean, you guys can conquer the world as one unit here.
Yeah, it's funny because there's like a few musicians, but the rest of my family is all professors and engineers. Like very, which they say is, music and math are related in those ways, and we definitely have a lot of math nerds in
It
my
is if
family.
you're in Tool. Tool is
Yeah,
all
right.
music and math for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny. I had I had a 4 year relationship with someone she was a classically trained pianist, singer songwriter, and she was obsessed with Nora Jones. So like I've gone through the whole Nora Jones thing, and man, Nora Jones, that Come Away With Me album. I don't know the exact dates, but I feel like it was like say 2002 to 2004, somewhere in there that album comes out. At that time, it was like new metal. It was like Korn and Limp Bizkit and Papa Roach and Stained. And then there's this young jazz musician, and this album wins like all the Grammys, sells like 30 million. She was an anomaly at the time, and you've seen
Yeah.
the longevity of her career since then is amazing. So big Nora Jones fan.
Yeah.
Have you
Yeah.
seen
And
her
I
in
think
concert at all?
no, and I was so close. I almost was booked to open for her at an amphitheater in Montana like last year. And I was so close. And then at the last minute, they're like, oh, she ended up choosing a friend of hers, which I totally get, as a musician, you love performing with your friends. But I was so close to booking it. And I was so excited, but I haven't seen her in concert. I've been trying to go to more concerts lately. I think for a while there, I just didn't leave the cave, do anything. So I've been enjoying live music more, and it's been nice.
Yeah, you hear of the man cave. Is there like a woman cave? Is that a thing too?
Oh, totally. This is part of my woman cave in here. This is
The studio.
my studio space, and then I have a big music room that's just full of instruments and craziness.
If I were to ask you as a kid what you wanted to be when you grew up, what would you say? So most people get into music a little later. So it's like, I wanted to be a fireman. I wanted to be a nurse. In your case, it's like you're playing the piano at, touching the piano at 3 and lessons at 6. So I feel like maybe your answer from the start is music, but I'll ask anyways.
It's actually acting. I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to be on Disney Channel. I wanted to be Emma Watson. I wanted to
From
be in
Harry
Harry Potter.
Potter.
Yeah. Yeah, I had the acting bug early on. I was convinced I was going to be a performer. I wanted to do plays. I loved that aspect of things. I never really pursued it because I always chose choir over drama, and slowly sort of went towards music as I got older. But acting was my first love.
Okay. And you have acting credits on like 11 different movies or TV shows. You have acting credits. What was it about acting that you loved? So yes, you're inspired by Emma Watson, but the actual craft of acting yourself, what drew you to that?
I think I just loved, there's something so glamorous, especially when you're a kid, like imagining the glamorous life of Hollywood and acting, and I don't know that I'd really thought it through much. It was just like, I want to be an actor, and I want to be famous, and I want to do all these things, and I loved performing. I always loved doing little talent shows and things like that. So I was always like a kid who loved the spotlight. Just funny because now I get a lot more anxiety about being on stage and acting and all of those
Be
things.
careful what you wish for, I guess.
Right,
Huh?
yeah. But as a kid, I loved it so much. So it was easy to want to do that.
How much do you think growing up in Colorado, Washington, Montana, how much do you think that influenced who you became as a musician and as a person?
I think it influenced me a lot. I think your environment has such an impact on the way you perceive the world and the way that you connect with the world around you. Um, Everything from just the energy of people in a place, and having been to bigger cities now, it's almost like whiplash. When you're used to a small community, you're used to a small town, you go to a place like New York, and it's just overwhelming. There's so many people, and so many people going different places so quickly. And I lived in a pretty small town in Montana. I think the smallest town I lived in was Butte, Montana, for like 6 months, and I loved it. But it's not really a great place for a music career. There's not a lot. There are some festivals and stuff, but it's got to try to like keep growing and getting up the ladder. But I loved growing up around nature, getting to hike and explore and be outside and be in the mountains. I feel weird in places that don't have mountains. It creeps me out. It's just flat for miles.
Yeah,
There's no
if you come to
landmarks.
Canada, don't go to Saskatchewan, because the
Yeah.
joke is like someone's dog runs away and they can just watch their dog for 3 days run away. So it's so flat. So yeah, if you ever tour Canada, you'll see the flatness of Saskatchewan. So
Oh, that's so, it gives me so much anxiety. It makes me feel like I don't know, like I'm just gonna detach from the earth and float away. Like there's just nothing keeping me grounded.
yeah, they also say there are no crimes committed in Saskatchewan, because you could rob a bank and the cops can literally watch you for 3 days driving away and just like call someone on the other end and tell them you're on your way. So, anyways, these are all good Canadian jokes.
Yeah.
So rumor has it that you composed your first song at 7 years old. Is this true, or is this like in the lore? Is this rumors that people start?
I did compose my first song. It was just an instrumental piece on the piano. I still remember it. It was very, very classical, cute little bop of a song.
Did you name it? What is the name of this song?
I never named it.
Untitled. It's
I'm
just Untitled.
shocked. Never thought about
How
it.
do you classify this song if it's not titled? I mean,
I know, that's terrible. Here, you can name it. Name it for me.
I'll name it.
Anything.
Okay, don't put me on the spot. I'll send you a name for it after
Okay.
this. If I were, as we work our way through, you were 3 years old, you were 6 years old, you're 9, you're taking lessons. If I were to meet you at 12 years old, who would I be meeting? What is Maiah Wynne like at 12?
Very energetic and silly. Just starting to get self-conscious about things. It's the 12 is that 6th grade, girls are starting to be mean to each other era. So I think I was starting to just to become aware of all the ways in which I didn't quite fit in to the perfect standard of things, which nobody fits, but I was also very bubbly, very loud. I was playing music for sure, playing the piano a lot and starting to write songs. I was starting to write my first songs on the piano, with vocals. I was in choir. I was a very athletic kid. I was doing a lot of sports. I think around that age, 12 or 13, I ran my first half marathon.
I mean, can't you be more ambitious as a kid? I mean, come on. What is this?
I think I was in like the best shape of my life when I was 12 or 13.
It's all downhill physically after 12. Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty much.
That's funny. So as we keep moving along the timeline, if you and I were friends at 16 and you invited me over, I don't know where you are at 16 in Montana, somewhere in the US, and you were going to play me some music, what albums would you be playing for me at 16 years of age?
Ooh. At 16, I was listening to a lot of indie music. I think I had just gotten into Iron and Wine. But I was also listening to a lot of rock, and I think Red Hot Chili Peppers was definitely, Californication was on there a lot. Trying to think, definitely Norah Jones. Florence and the Machine. I was just getting to Florence and the Machine. I was a huge fan of that. I can't remember what the name of the record was, but the one that has Dog Days on it.
I think the album might actually be called Dog Days, or Dog
Oh,
Days Are
great.
Over, or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that song was so amazing. I remember the first time I heard it and just being blown away at the production of the music. Her voice is incredible, and then the production just does such an incredible job at supporting the power in her voice. And you get those dramatic drums. There's something so primal about Florence and the Machine, and especially as a teenage girl, it was just like a religious experience listening to her for the first time. So definitely Florence and the Machine. Radiohead. I was listening to a lot of Radiohead. Let's see. I feel like I was also listening to Fiona Apple around that time. Just starting to listen to there's a band called Astronaut Husband that I found. There was this person who posted indie songs on YouTube as playlists. And I don't know where they found their music, but they would compile all of these songs, and I would find and discover all these smaller artists. And this is before Spotify and all of these places that it becomes so much easier now to discover artists. But she was sort of like this curator of music and had millions of subscribers to her YouTube channel because she would find all of these hidden gems.
She's like the original influencer before it was a
Yeah,
cool thing on Instagram.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's why I found Daughter was huge. I was listening to them all the time, and that's how I found Daughter as well. Oh, Straight to My Heart. Their music is amazing. So yeah, there's a good mix in there. I think
that's an
maybe
eclectic mix of music. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And did you discover Iron and Wine from their song on the Twilight soundtrack? That was a big deal. It is that a thing or no?
It's not.
Okay, because they had you know, they were big enough but more underground. And then there was the, you know, Twilight comes out, biggest thing in the world, and the soundtrack had a new single from Paramore that was huge. It had a new single from someone else that was huge, and on that album,
Christina Perri, right?
Christina Perri. Okay, and Iron and Wine had a song called Flightless Bird American Mouth. So it's like this beautiful acoustic song that kind of took off because of Twilight. So that was actually how I discovered it.
That's
was
so
from
cool.
The Twilight soundtrack. So a confession, I guess.
I love that confession. I discovered it from actually one of the guys from the YMCA that I beat at Guitar Hero showed me Iron and Wine.
He wanted to give you songs that didn't have amazing guitar solos to wean you off of them.
I have to add one band, Death Cab for Cutie. I listen to a ton, so I'm adding that because it's important.
I think it's Ben Gibbard, right? The singer from Death Cab. Mm-hmm. So I think he might be my favorite lyricist. He has just such unique, descriptive, almost poetic lyrics. And my history with Death Cab. So I saw them in Toronto at Massey Hall, which is considered one of the best venues in the world. And they were amazing. And in Ottawa, there's one of the biggest festivals in Canada called Blues Fest. And every year I go, it's 12 days long. I go all 12 days, and Death Cab is playing it this summer in Ottawa. So I'll be seeing them for a second time. And the last thing is every year I have a list of my favorite albums. So I do a podcast episode, best albums of the year. So I had the 9 best albums of 2022, and I had Death Cab's newest album on there. I think it's Asphalt Meadows is what it's called.
Yeah.
They're so good. They're so good.
It's so good. And I totally agree. The lyricism and the way that he phrases things isn't predictable. I find that his way with words is unique, but still accessible. Like, you know what he's saying and you know the feeling that is being conveyed, but it's in a way that you're not always expecting. And I admire that about him a lot.
That's awesome. It's funny. I said, I was in a long-term relationship with someone that was obsessed with Norah Jones. My last long-term relationship, I was with someone that was obsessed with Florence and the Machine. So I'm
We're
like
checking off the box.
My music history is told through what my partner likes, I suppose. But I saw Florence and the Machine in Toronto, and they were amazing as well. So before this interview, I put out the bat signal for the Maiah Wynne fans, for the Envy of None fans to send in their fan questions. And if their questions were awesome enough, I would ask them, and I would give credit during this interview to whoever provided that question. And I think there were more questions submitted for this interview than any other interview in the 3-year history. So your fans are alive and well. They are very active on social media. And I'm going to sprinkle those questions throughout the rest of the interview. And the first question I want to ask, we're talking about Guitar Hero, so video games. We have a question about video games from Daniel B. Cheeks. I don't know if that's his real name. And it is. Well, I apologize, Daniel B. Cheeks. He asks, I'd love to ask Maiah what her go-to character and course are on Mario Kart. Do you play Mario Kart? Is that a known thing to your fans?
I do. Well, I don't know if it's known to my fans, but I do play Mario Kart. And my go-to character is probably Link. There are characters who are just innately faster than other characters, and I play to win, so I go for Link. Or although they just released Birdo as a character, and it's very fun to play as Birdo. So and then I'm a big fan of the Rainbow Bridge, or the Rainbow, is it the Rainbow
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 Bridge.
Road?
Rainbow
Yeah,
Road,
Rainbow
there you go.
Road. Oh yeah,
That
that's
goes all the
great.
way back to like the Nintendo 64 or the Super Nintendo. That's like the one course that they carry over across all the
Yeah,
games.
that's true.
Are you
Ooh,
playing Mario Kart 8 on the Switch? Is that what's going on?
I am playing on the Switch, and there is a course called the Mushroom Gorge, I think, where you get to bounce on mushrooms. I think I'm going to change it to that. That's my favorite course.
All right. How does Mr. Cheeks know that you're into Mario Kart? That's my next question. Anyways, what are some of the jobs that you had leading up to becoming a professional musician? Our listeners just love to hear that somebody like took out the garbage and worked in a slaughterhouse and like all these weird things, you know, that they're human like the rest of us. Did you go
Yeah.
right into music, or were there any crappy jobs in there?
I definitely had some crappy jobs, but they were also unusual jobs. I've never had like a regular normal job. I interned, basically was a PA on film sets for a while. So, and if you don't know anything about film sets, a PA is basically the lowest of the low. Like, you're going and grabbing people's coffee, you're running back and forth, all sweaty, running miles a day trying to get people what they need and grab cables. So I did basically PA work for the sound team on a few films when I was around 17, 18, basically as an internship. And then but at 16, I started to pursue music full time as a job. I was playing at coffee shops, I was doing shows, I was playing on street corners. I had a regular show every weekend at a coffee shop in Montana, and just was focusing full time on music. And I've been doing that pretty much ever since.
So I know you tried to share like bad jobs, but those sound like two pretty good jobs. I mean, of all the
They were
bad
good
jobs
jobs.
that people have listed on here, yours are like
Yeah.
two dream jobs essentially,
Right. Yeah.
except that
Yeah.
they're like
I mean,
starting jobs, you know. But
yeah, I think that the sad thing about like being a PA on a small independent film, usually, like, I remember we had one day that we were working over 24 hours straight, and that's the only bad thing about film sets, especially independent ones where you don't have like people following the rules, is you end up working really, really long days in really grueling conditions. Especially in Montana, you're in like freezing cold conditions. The glamour wears off pretty quick. It's a lot of hard work, and you're out there for like 16 hours a day, if not longer, and you're just exhausted by the end of it. You're so tired. But it's filmmakers, it's creatives. Creatives are crazy people, but it's worth it for the art.
so you said that, at the start you're 16, you're playing, coffee shops and open mics or busking or whatever. Would you say it was winning different Battle of the Bands or songwriting competitions? Would you say that's where the big breaks started to come? You started to get recognized for your talent?
Yeah, I feel like it was definitely, I started entering competitions. The first time I really felt like I had sort of recognition for what I was doing, I was 17, and I entered in Montana. They did this thing called the Zoom Music Awards. It was sort of like a mini version of the Grammys, and it was sort of a competition. There was a battle of the bands, and then at the end there was this big awards ceremony for the best local bands, and I won the 18 and under sort of portion of that contest. And I remember, they rented out this huge, because there's, it's a big community of people who are excited to support the local arts, and there was like 1,000 people there to see all of the people get their awards. And I walked up on stage and I had my little speech and had my award and my big check, and it was really exciting. And I think it gave me the bug to keep entering contests and keep trying. And I've entered a lot of contests, and I've been lucky enough to win a handful of them, and they have led to the best opportunities that I've had. It was actually a contest that led to Envy of None, in a roundabout way. And so it's definitely been the best for me to network and have opportunities to get recognition, especially as somebody that didn't have really any contacts within the music industry. Growing up, it was sort of, I'm just winging it and doing my best to try to figure it out, like most people are, but it really helped me a lot to get sort of a leg up.
So a good takeaway from that is to just get yourself out there as a musician. If you believe in your music, it's like if you can just get the right people to hear it, or if you can connect the music to fans, people that are looking for that. And I have a fan question sent in where it ties in with that. So Cassandra Sterling asks, if you had one piece of advice for fellow singer-songwriters who are trying to move people with their music, what would it be?
Hmm. I feel like it's it's easy as a songwriter to sort of fall into that trap of what do people want to hear? And then you start writing what you think other people want to hear, what you think is going to do well on social media, what you think is going to be popular, what you think people are going to enjoy listening to. And at the end of the day, none of that matters. The most important thing and the thing that people are going to connect with the most is the thing that you feel and the thing that means something to you. Because I think people can feel when you care about your art and when you're speaking from the heart and when you're saying something that matters to you, whatever it is. And I think that's that little piece of magic that moves people. And especially if you have something important to say, something that you've been through, something that you want to talk about through your art, um, just make it for you and speak from your authentic self, and you're gonna move so many more people that way than you would if you were trying to play any other games of figuring out what people want to hear or how to appeal to anybody else. But that, I guess that would be my advice.
That's really good advice. I have one more question about growing up, and then we'll move into your solo music. Musicians are often told, that having a career in the music industry, that is a lottery ticket. That's a pipe dream. Nobody makes it. I mean, you should just go and get a good education and get a good job and play it safe. Did you ever have to deal with that kind of resistance from family or friends? And if so, how did you overcome that?
I definitely did. um and I still fight that sort of fear inside myself too, of just how uncertain of a career it is. But I knew that it was what I wanted to do. I've always been very headstrong and sort of um determined when it comes to music, uh and I just went for it. I At 16, I really just went for it. I left home in Spokane and I went to Montana and I started pursuing music. Um, and I didn't really care what my parents had to say about it. Um, and it was hard. It was really hard. I was not making a lot of money. I was sort of scraping by for a long time. I still kind of am sometimes. With music in general, you never know where your next paycheck is going to come from. There are some things that are consistent, but in general, there might be a month where you make a lot of money because you're booking shows and you're doing all of these other things. And then for the next month, you don't have anything scheduled and you're just doing your best to make ends meet. And it's hard. It's definitely not an easy career path, but it's doable, and you can definitely make it work. But it's hard and you have to really love it. I think if you don't love it so much that you couldn't imagine doing anything else, then it's not going to work out. I feel like if you like it and then you make it your career, you're just going to end up hating it. I don't know. That's what I think.
That's actually the same advice that people give to entrepreneurs. So it's similar for musicians and entrepreneurs, where you're not getting a Monday to Friday paycheck that's just steady. It's the same thing every week. So they tell entrepreneurs, just like they tell musicians, you better love what you're doing and you better be committed to it, because it's so challenging and it's such hard work that if you don't love it, you're not going to push through those hard times to still be around when that success would actually come in, for your efforts. So that's good advice for basically anyone that's creative or anyone that's looking to get outside of the standard 9 to 5 job.
Yeah, it's true though. It's especially now, there's so much to do with social media, with marketing, with you basically are an entrepreneur. You are starting your own. I just started my own business. my first LLC, and it's exciting, but it's, you know, I'm learning business terms and things that I never
Get those
really thought that
tax
I'd have to,
write-offs.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And things that I never thought that I would have to do as a musician, but you do, you have to, you basically are your own business, and you have to market yourself, and you have to market your music, and you have to do all these things to make it work. And sometimes it can feel like it's sucking the life out of the music, because you're having to focus on all these other things, and all you want to focus on is the music and the heart. But it's hard, and can be draining at times.
So for the loyal listeners of this podcast who listen to every episode or watch every episode, regardless of who the guest is. So for those hardcore podcast fans that maybe haven't had a chance to check out your solo music, how do you describe the music? I know it's never easy, right?
Actually, I'm very excited because as I've been working on my album that I'll be releasing soon, it was my goal to really define myself as an artist with this record. So it'll be easier for me to do that very soon once this album is out. So far, I've released a lot of songs that were specific to different projects, and we're sort of varying in genres and styles. And so it was sort of this weird, you know, mixture of things that was not easily definable into one thing. But this album that I'm working on, it feels like me, and it feels like all of these influences I've talked about, with little bits of bluegrass instruments, little bits of rock and indie music and pop, and sort of a blend of all of these things that have influenced me through my life in one place. And it's from the heart. It's very close to my heart. I think the music that I make and the music that I'm about to put out is I would say indie folk, and orchestral indie folk is how I would put it. And it's full of heart and my guts.
My heart and my guts.
Yeah.
There you go. I want that on a sticker on the front cover of the album. So in preparation for this interview, I went back, I listened to your entire discography, all your solo music, the album, the singles. I listened to the Envy of None album. I don't know, I listened to it 10 times for the Alf interviews. I listened to it 3 more times for this interview. So I'm super familiar with your entire career and discography here. And I have to say that across both projects, not just solo, but also the Envy of None stuff, your music has this depth to it, this thickness to it, these haunting undertones. And I'm curious where that comes from. So even in, you know, some of your songs are darker than others, but even in your, you know, more poppy or uplifting songs, because there's like a nice catchy ukulele or something, there's still this like darkness or something haunting going on. Where does that come from?
I have the darkness in my soul.
There you go.
That's all I can say about that. I think it just comes from that place inside me, that where I was inspired to make music in the first place. And, you know, I've been through some things that have been really hard, and music has been a way for me. And I think for a lot of people who are drawn to music, it's a way to work through things and process things. I think there's a lot of musicians, a lot of artists in general who have taken trauma and things that they've been through and used art as a way to process and redirect that energy. And I think there's little bits of darkness in my music, but it's coming from a place of I think trying to take that pain and turn it into something beautiful, and turn it into something that is meaningful to me. And on the other hand, I kind of like spooky, haunting things in general.
Yeah, I've heard that if you don't think that you have darkness within you, you just don't know yourself well enough. Like that's a part of the human condition, right? All of us, we're the only species that is aware of our own imminent doom. We know that someday we're going to die. We just don't know when. And like that is such a weight that we have. Other animals, like, you know, dogs and cats and rabbits, they just go day to day and they do their thing and they're happy. And we have this thing on us where it's like there is a clock that's ticking. And so I've heard it said that if you don't think that there's some darkness in there, it's like you are living up here and you are not actually asking the hard questions. Do you think there's any truth to that?
I think there's truth to that for sure. I think humans are incredibly complex animals. I think we are not nearly as smart as we think we are, but we are incredibly emotionally complex, and we don't always have the brain, I think, to figure out all those things and work through things and what it all means. I mean, it's quite terrifying when you think of it. We are living in a reality that we don't understand. That's just that's terrifying in general. We don't know what's going to happen when we die. We don't know why we're here, and our brains are perceiving so much that we don't understand. We're taking all of this input. There's so much that's happening that we don't see. This is just our brain's interpretation of reality, and there's so much that we don't have the answers to, and that is quite terrifying, I think. And just there's so much you could go into with that, with the light and the darkness and that exists in the world, and what that means, and why are people, why do people have darkness inside of them? What makes people good? What makes people bad? What is the world? I don't know. I have an existential crisis every day, so I get that.
You've started your quarter life crisis already. Yeah, man. There's the balance, right? There's the yin and the yang, the light and the darkness. There's the chaos and order. And like you mentioned, we are as humans, we are bombarded with information all day long from all of our senses. And the human brain, the only way we can cope is we actually ignore like 99.9% of the information that's coming in. We only really acknowledge the stuff that keeps us alive, essentially. And when people do drugs, that's what opens up. It basically takes off that filter where you're only getting 1% come through and you're getting 100% come through. That's why people have like the mystical experience on hallucinogenics and on different drugs. It takes away that the veil, and it's an overwhelming amount of stimulation. And I don't know what I'm getting at, but
this is a great conversation. No, because I think about this all the time. I've never done those kinds of drugs, but I've talked to a lot of people who have, and I have a sleep disorder where it feels really similar what I experience at night sometimes, where it feels like the veil is lifted, and I'm like, what the heck is happening? I'm seeing things I'm not supposed to see. There's like weird.
Do you have like lucid dreams and
I have hallucinations? Yeah, and I hallucinate all on my own. I don't need the help, but I've had a lot of really weird experiences and seen a lot of weird things, and it's sort of it does feel in those moments that I'm seeing things and perceiving of things that I'm not really supposed to. And then that makes me laugh, because sometimes it feels like we have this, our unconscious brain is really the smart one, right? Our conscious brain is really dumb and cannot be trusted with too much information. It's like our unconscious brain is controlling everything, making sure we're breathing, making sure our blood is moving through our body, all of these micro movements that we don't really perceive of or think of on a regular basis. And we just, our unconscious brain is like, okay, all you got to do is just go to the bathroom, eat some food, drink some water. We have very, very basic tasks that we are assigned. But it does feel like that sometimes. I feel like there's this unconscious part of our brain that knows a lot more than our conscious brain does.
Yeah, at the end of the day, we think we're smart, but we're just like big dumb apes that have like evolved for a few years.
Puppets, yeah.
And man, the more I think about the human condition, the more it like scares me at how much of an impossibility we are, period, just being alive. There's the fact that we're one livable planet in an infinite universe. Like how does that happen, that there's life even to begin with? Then there's our bodies, like you mentioned. There's millions or billions of things going on without our knowledge, that if any of those stop, we're dead. Like it's impossible that we were born, and it's basically impossible that we continue to live as is. There's I don't know, millions or billions of bacteria. Like we have organisms within us that if those don't live, we don't live.
Doesn't that kind of make you feel better though? Like you're not alone. You have a whole
Oh, I
family of little
still
bugs
feel
inside
alone pretty
you.
frequently, but it's just crazy. And I mean, we'll get off this topic in a second, but it's fascinating that, you know, I even think back for you to even be here right now, besides the
Mhm.
impossibilities physically of what's keeping you alive and running right now, for you to even be here, you have to go through the entire lineage of human history to your furthest ancestors. And if any of them die at any point, you're not here. If any of
Right.
them get the plague or the black lung or uh, trip and fall and hit their head or don't find the partner that they mated with, like
Right.
it's an impossibility
Right.
going back to the beginning of human history that you're even here. Like it's tough to think about these things
It
sometimes.
is. But then you have the question of, if you weren't here in this body, in this circumstance, would you be here in a different way? Would you be a different person? Would you be a bug? Would you be a bee, or a rock under someone's shoe?
That just
You
gets
know.
even more complicated. Yeah. So does that mean you might believe in like reincarnation? If you could be something else to start with, that you could possibly come back as something else?
My first belief is just that I don't know anything, but my
That's
second,
what,
I do have
yeah.
a lot of theories. I have a lot of theories that I think about, and one of them is that we are all the same, like, energy. Um, Not necessarily, like, we're just perceiving all of these different, living different lives, and that you and I are the same as everybody else on this planet, and every animal and every bird and every bee and every bug and every, that this energy is the grass beneath our feet, and that basically all of this is just like a way for life to experience itself and experience every possibility and every emotion and every different version of life that it could. And at the end of the day, we sort of go back into the ether of energy and remerge with ourselves. I don't know. That's a really weird one, but that's my theory right now.
So are you saying this is all like some kind of infinite intelligence? Like we're all a part of this one infinite intelligence that
Yeah, I
is
think we're
what
all
it
part of the
is.
same jelly blob in space. I don't know.
Jelly blob in space. Yeah. That's the name. That should be the name of your new album. That'll be the name of my new album, and I'll give you credit
Yeah,
for it.
perfect.
I could talk about this stuff forever, but I guess we'll keep going with the music
Yeah.
because I have like 8 pages of questions,
Okay, great.
things I want to know about. I was saying how your music has, you know, these haunting undertones, and then to prove my point, your very first song released on Spotify is called "Haunted Song" from 2016. So you're making this easy for me. Um, is that the first song you recorded and released, or that's just the first one that's still available on the
It's
streaming
the
site?
first one that's still available. I did release an early album when I was like 16. Um, and I recorded that when I was 16, Haunted Song. That was actually, we were recording, I was working on a film, I was acting in a film, and I was helping write the music for it. It was a teen horror musical, and I was the lead actress in it. And we were working in this theater, and we had started recording some music, and then I wrote this song because the theater was supposedly haunted. It was really spooky, and we had this choir there, and I was like, can you guys just make like weird zombie sounds at the end of this? So it was all live, one take thing. um and it was fun, and it was silly, and we just sort of recorded it. But that was one of the tracks that we ended up putting out on Spotify, and I have not retracted it yet. I think I might retract it at some point, but I right now I feel like my Spotify is very messy and full of a lot of random things. But very soon it will be more organized. But yeah, for now, the old silly little gems of music are on there.
So do you think when the new album comes out, you might pull almost everything else, and then that is the start of what people are discovering?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna pull pretty much mostly everything else. I'll leave a few things, a few songs and projects, but there's a lot of stuff on there. There's like some instrumentals that I want to take off, because I just had them on there for a really specific reason for a while. But yeah, it's definitely something that I'm excited for, to have this album out and sort of take down stuff that I don't feel really is relevant to the artist I want to be anymore. But I'll still have everything available like on my Patreon for people who want to listen to it. And because I still love my old music, and you know, I can see and hear my growth as an artist, which I love. But I'm really careful to not hate on my old music, because I think, you know, that was part of my growth, and I love it, and it was a part of my journey, and nothing's ever perfect, and I'm sure the things I'm making now, I'll look back on at some point and think, oh, you know, I'm so much better now for these other reasons, and I probably will be wrong in some ways, you know. It's just but I do feel excited to sort of create an artist image and create this more curated artist profile, so people have a more clear idea of who I am, and I do too.
You're talking about the growth that you've had as a musician. So after the Haunted song in 2016, the next song is 2017, a Siren song. And in my notes, I have that there's a tremendous amount of growth just between those two songs in that 1 year period of time. So growth in the quality of the recording, in the quality of your actual like vocal performance, in the song itself, like the writing of the song and the lyrics and the vocal delivery and all that stuff. So I was curious if you think at that point in time between 2016 and 2017, if you were just having just a ton of growth as a musician, and if so, what do you account for that? Are you like playing all day long or writing all day long?
Yeah, I think I really started to, I was writing a lot. I've written a lot, but especially at that time, at this point, I've written probably 400 or more songs. And I write constantly and was performing a lot. I've grown so much, and my voice has gotten so much better over time. I've worked really hard at getting better. Like, I didn't start out, I wasn't one of those, like, always had an inclination towards music, and I always had some talent there, but I didn't start out and like the most amazing musician you hear. I was still a kid. I was still a kid learning and growing. And even at this time, like that first song, I was 16, you know, and then during Siren Song, I think I was like 17 or 18 or 9, you know, somewhere in there. And it just, I think during that time, I was so focused on music and so wrapped up in it that I was learning so much so fast. And it helped a lot to record my voice and hear it and think, oh, okay, this thing that sounds good in my head maybe doesn't sound the same out there, and start adjusting and learning. And I'm still growing and learning, and it's a process. I think I'll always be growing and learning. And you can really get trapped in that cycle of overthinking things too. And I think I also kind of like regressed in some ways. I lost some of my confidence in there. I got quieter, my voice got quieter because I was becoming more self-conscious and more self-aware of it. And now I'm sort of finding that strength again to be loud again. And I don't know, that's me rambling about self-confidence, but yeah.
It's funny when you have someone that has never heard their voice played back. So whether it's a singer hearing their voice played back for the first time, or even someone that's not a musician that hears their voice back on like a voice recording or a voice note, until you experience that, you don't realize that your voice to everyone else sounds different than you. Like, we're hearing our own voice through like our chest cavity and our skulls, and our voices sound a little like lower and thicker and deeper than they actually sound to other people. Have you, is that maybe what you experienced at the start?
Absolutely. There's a little bit of that. And just it's like, I don't know, it's such a shock when you hear your voice for the first time in a recording. It is such a shock because it's so different than how you're hearing it. And then there's all of the nuance of that, like, oh, this little inflection of my voice, and what does this sound like in here, and what does it feel like, and what does it sound like out there. So I started to do a lot of that, where I was recording things with my laptop or my phone or a little Zoom recorder and then playing it back. And that's really, I think, how I started to get better the most, is just that sort of instant playback and relearning and trying again, because you can try something, listen to it, oh, that's not what I wanted, try something else, oh, okay, that's how I make the sound that I'm trying to make. I don't know, it's such a weird process, and it sounds so different in your head than it does outside of your body.
So in 2017, you released another song. So this was the Ballad of Lefty Brown. This has a Western feel to it. and it's inspired by the movie of the same name, which seems like it's a Western as well. Where does that connection come in, that the song was written, there's the movie, I believe the song was used in the ending credits? How does this come to be a thing?
Yeah, so that was actually one of those films that I was an intern on, essentially working as a PA for the sound team. And it was a small enough film. We were in Montana, and it was a small enough film that I actually got to talk with Bill Pullman, the lead actors, and the director and the producers, and which is really rare and doesn't happen, normally, especially if you're a PA. But I ended up writing that song on set. We had one scene where we didn't need to record sound, and I took out my guitar, and you're surrounded by the story and the characters and seeing it all play out in real time. And so it's easy to sort of write a song inspired by the story. And Bill Pullman, the lead actor, is just incredibly kind and sweet. And we ended up going to his house to record something for a different project for him. And he and his wife made us chili, and we're super sweet hosts. And I ended up playing the song for him, and he just really supported me and was super kind and was like, you got to show this, to the director. And eventually the producers wanted to hear it, and the director wanted to hear it. And then one thing led to another, and they ended up using it in the film. I ended up only having one day to record it. So we recorded it and mixed it and mastered it in like one day, and got it done. And it was really fun and exciting. And yeah, I think all the percussion you hear is just me stomping on the stairs. And I'm so happy with how it turned out, and it's a really fun project to do. And I got to do a music video where I dressed up as a cowboy, which is fun.
Yeah, I had a few comments about it. So one is that even though it has a Western feel to it, so it's still, it's kind of a different genre than the other music, it still has that haunting feel to it. So like you're consistent across genres, which is good. And I was going to ask you about there's stomps and claps in the song. I was going to ask you if those are like programmed or samples, or if you actually recorded them, and you mentioned you did. Any tips for other musicians that want great sounding stomps or claps? What are your tips? Because they sounded good.
Oh yeah, a hollow staircase in your house made of wood is my tips for that.
Just got to buy a new house. There you go.
Yeah, good heavy boots, and a good stairwell are your best friends.
Awesome. It's funny, Bill Pullman has had like this massive successful career over decades, and the first movie that comes to mind was Casper the Friendly Ghost. So there was the back when there was only cartoons. Yeah, there's the live action version where you have Devon Sawa, that every girl, my sister's a few years older than me, she was obsessed with Devon Sawa. When Casper the Ghost becomes a real boy and walks down the stairs, that's where everyone is like obsessed with him. So anyways, it's funny what comes to you, right?
Yeah, that's so funny. I forgot he was in that, and I love that movie. Like, I remember watching that, totally having that same moment of, oh my gosh, I'm in love with Casper.
Yeah, the last Bill Pullman thing I remember is he's in a really critically acclaimed TV show that's really dark. Like there's a bunch of murder and stuff. There are a few seasons in. I forget what it's called, but it's super acclaimed and people love it. And I think it's all on Netflix. So I have seen him since then in a TV show. I don't know why I'm forgetting the name. It's something dark. It's called like The Killing or something like that, but I don't think it's The Killing. Anyways, we have the next fan question. This comes from Darshan Chauhan. Definitely said his name correctly. And his question is, what is the secret to your excited yet calm composure?
Ooh. Social anxiety. I feel like that drives most of my composure. I do feel a mixture of calmness. I think it really is just that I have that duality of like, I feel confident because I've had so much practice being on stage and being in front of people and doing conversations like this, but then I also still have that awkwardness inside of me, and they just combine to form whatever this is.
Do you feel more confident on stage sometimes than in a room with other people?
Oh, all the time. Yeah. I feel like it's because on stage, I know what I'm supposed to be doing. There's no, like, I don't have to question whether or not I'm saying the right things, or if this awkward silence means I should leave or how to end the conversation. It's like, I know what to do. I sing the songs, I can have good banter, and like I feel like I do a good job with jokes and banter on stage. But partially because it's like if an audience is there, I know how to work with it. But other situations I have such a hard time with, and like feeling out conversations and the whole social thing is weird.
So in 2018, you released two other songs, so Sleep and A Chance to Say Goodbye. I'd say those two are my two favorite Maiah Wynne songs so far until the new album comes out. So 2018, in my eyes, you were on a roll. That's the year that my two favorite songs came out. And I have a couple questions about those songs. So for the song Sleep, what's the story behind that song and the lyrics? I know you just mentioned to me that there's trouble sleeping sometimes, and there's I don't know if that's the explanation now for it, but
Yes, actually. So my sleep disorders has been a really big part of my life. I started sleepwalking when I was 3 or 4. Um, and then it sort of turned into more active things, like I was running into walls, I was hallucinating and seeing scary creatures. And it's similar to like people who have sleep paralysis and those kinds of hallucinations where you're seeing like really creepy, scary things. But I don't have the paralysis, so I will get up and scream and think, what is happening? What am I seeing? I'm seeing the most terrifying thing. The hard thing is that when those night terrors are happening and when you're half asleep, your logic brain isn't there, your thinking brain is not awake, and so you can't logically think, oh, there's no way this is real, I'm probably sleeping. You just think, oh my god, I'm gonna die, and then you react and you respond. And so it got really bad for a while, but I had been going through some really hard things, and it was sort of making things worse, making nightmares worse. I was not sleeping well, and so I ended up writing that song kind of about what that feels like, and all of those, that mixture of emotions and dealing with trauma and PTSD and all of these things, how they sort of combine in the brain and turn into really weird sleep episodes. But yeah, it's been better recently.
so two questions about that. After you have those episodes, do you ever resort to journaling to try to figure out like what the message is when you have like the hallucinations? So number one, do you journal at all to try to make sense of this on paper in front of you and outside of your head? And the other question was, you said it's a little bit better now. Are there certain things you found you can do to make it better? Like a lot of exercise, so you're so exhausted that you're just, it's just darkness for 8 hours and then you wake up.
That does, okay, if I really really exhaust myself, that does occasionally work. I have journaled. There was one time where I had to draw what I saw because it was so creepy and weird, and I just had to like get it out of my head, and I drew it. And then my roommate was like, this is really creepy, you have to throw it away. And so I ended up throwing it away because it was just really creepy. But it was like I just needed to get it out of my brain. But I found that I actually have an incredible capacity of remembering my dreams. I remember dreams that I had when I was 6. I remember dreams that I had like at different ages throughout my life. I remember dreams almost better than I remember actual life and life events. It's really weird. So I generally don't journal about it, but I will sort of look up dream meanings sometimes, like, oh, what does it mean if you see this? Or and sometimes it does help, and sometimes it does make sense, like, oh yeah, psychologically that makes sense, this means I'm feeling out of control, or this means this, and you can sort of trace it back, self-analyze. But yeah, I can't remember the other half of that question, but I think I
you answered it. So it was journaling, and it was if there's anything you can do to kind of negate the negative effects. So you've answered both.
Yes. Okay. But there is one thing in specific that helped more than anything, and that was EMDR therapy, which stimulates both sides of your brain with bilateral stimulation, either visually or like physically. You hold these remotes that buzz sort of back and forth, or you're watching something that's going back and forth. And then
is there meditation that is that?
I
because
think there are, yeah.
someone told me for meditation that there's like YouTube videos where it's doing a different thing in each ear, and the two together stimulate the brain in a certain way. I don't know if I feel like that's what
Yeah.
that is, but I don't know if that.
I think that basically the idea behind it is if you're doing that, it helps create new neural pathways in your brain.
Hmm.
So it increases the effectiveness of what you're doing. And when it comes to EMDR therapy, it's good to focus on like specific memories. So for me, like I worked through a lot of memories from like my childhood on, like really early childhood memories that like made me feel scared to sleep. And it just sort of stayed with me. And so I was always on edge when I was sleeping. Um, and so basically, through that therapy, you're reworking memories while this is happening and basically creating a new neural pathway so that instead, when you think about these things, you're not experiencing it from a first person perspective, you're experiencing it from a third person perspective, and it doesn't sort of engage your fight or flight. I don't know, but it's really cool. And it actually like it worked super well for me. And I started sleeping so much better.
That's good. That's good that there's a remedy or something that at least
Highly recommend.
helps or makes it better. I experienced sleep paralysis one time in my life when I was a kid, and my understanding is when we fall asleep and we get into, you know, maybe REM sleep, the body releases a certain chemical that basically it just numbs everything so we don't act out the things that we dream. And when, you know, when people sleepwalk or like you, they act out their dreams physically, it's that there's a delay in that chemical, or you don't release as much of that chemical. So yeah, it's a strange thing. And sleep paralysis apparently is the reverse. It's at the end where your your brain comes out of the, what is it, your brain comes out of the sleep and the paralysis, but the rest of the body hasn't done it yet. Like the two aren't coordinated
Mm-hmm.
right. So it's like you
So
wake up, but the
creepy.
body, you're feeling what it's like while you're sleeping, where your body actually has a way of making you not move for safety, to not fall out of the bed and that stuff. So that's what I've heard is the explanation for
Yeah.
why those things happen.
Which I have had paralysis once, which is funny because most of the time I don't because of whatever's going on in my brain. But I do feel like in some ways it's scarier to not be able to move. Like, because at least with my other stuff, I might be doing it's more dangerous, but at least I feel like I have some sort of capability to like run away. That's usually what I'm doing is running away from things. But it is more dangerous because I've like jumped off of a bunk bed and you know, who knows what sleep me is gonna do. So, you know, yeah, I don't know, I would probably take the paralysis over the flinging myself off things, but it would be definitely scarier, I think, to not be able to move.
Yeah, just quickly, and then we'll move on to the next song in
Yeah.
2019. But I was playing video games for like hours and like late at night, and it's something about like that stimulation that it messes with the natural body's ability to function, I guess. And I just in the middle of the night, I woke up and I was completely paralyzed. So brain is 100%, like I'm there 100% functioning, but body is 0%. I'm just there experiencing nothing. I can't feel my body, 100%
That's so
paralyzed.
creepy.
And as you know, number one, as a kid, you never know what's going on. And number two, if you've never experienced it, you don't know, like, am I dead? And I'm just experiencing, you know, the nether realms. Like, am I in purgatory? Like, what's going on? Right. And
Yeah.
I was there and I was able to, this is how this went down, is I was able to move slightly enough to fall off of the bed so that my parent, like my family heard like a thump and came in. And even for probably like 2 hours after that, I was just this lump on the floor. Like I was 100% there. And they call in an ambulance. The ambulance comes and they're all talking like I'm dead, even though I'm there. And I can hear like, okay, he's not reacting. He's not whatever. And 100% I am there mentally, just hearing them talk about this corpse that's in front of them. So that was
Oh,
my experience for 3 hours. And it's funny, like I haven't thought about it since then. I was probably 8 or 9 or something, but that's what
that's
it's
so
like. Yeah.
terrifying. That's genuinely awful. I had a
Yeah.
similar experience, but in a very different way. But I got sort of stuck in REM. I jolted out of bed because I have this weird issue where my body still moves, right? And I like woke up from sleep and was like, oh no, I really have to pee. You know, you have those dreams where you're like peeing in your dream and you're like, oh my gosh, no.
All the time.
I
Yeah.
like jolted out of bed. I like forced myself out of bed as fast as I could. And I got stuck. Like my eyes were moving like they were in REM and like I couldn't control them. And I didn't have control over my body and what was happening. And like everything was spinning. And I was stuck like that for like 7 hours. It was the worst experience. And I've never had it happen since then, but it was just like, I don't know, sleep, man. It's weird.
Again, like we were talking about the impossibilities of just us being alive. Part of that is even sleep, like how we just shut off for 8 hours and it allows the brain to carpment. How do you say that? Anyways, it allows you, the brain, to store needed information in places for long-term memory, and it discards stuff from the day that you don't need. It's this
Yeah.
like, what is sleep? It's so like, it's the it's so weird. Like humans, we don't think about it. It's like, yeah, like we eat and we sleep and we go to work. Like we just don't think about the way things are, but it's everything is so strange.
It's so strange. And sometimes I feel like dreams, again, going back to the weird little like unconscious dude in your head that has control over everything. Sometimes I feel like dreams are just like ways to distract conscious brain because conscious brain gets bored, you know, and it's like, oh, well, here's a dream to entertain you while I'm, you know, filing away all your memories.
Yeah, it's like the inner voice and the ego and like all these things. I feel like we should have done drugs or drank before this interview, but apparently we didn't even have to, which is good. Okay, so 2019, you released the song "Open Up My Eyes." Man, you play so many different instruments. Like ukulele, guitar, piano, you're singing, you're doing percussion stuff. How do you choose what the primary instrument should be for a song? Like, why is this song a ukulele and the other one is an acoustic guitar? Why is this song piano based and this one's a cappella? Does it just speak to you in a certain way as you're writing it?
I think I usually just stick with whatever instrument I write the song on. It's actually pretty rare that I'll switch it after I've written the song on something, but I have done that. And I think it's usually because I'm thinking, oh, this doesn't feel like it matches the vibe of the song. But like with Open Up My Eyes, I wrote it on the ukulele, so I sort of stayed there. And that's generally what I'll do. But now I'm going to overthink that and wonder if I should.
Yeah, sorry for messing up the songwriting process. I guess another follow-up question is, let's say 3 of your songs are written on piano and that's how they're recorded and released. It's piano based. But let's say you're playing at a coffee shop or you're playing an open mic and you're there with your acoustic guitar. Do you ever play songs that were based on a different instrument on a different instrument, or do you always stick to the same one?
I do. I mix things up if I have to, and I'll sort of do the chord conversion in my brain. And it's fun, actually. I've found that sometimes I'll play something on the guitar that I normally play on the piano, and it'll sound really, really good and different and give a totally different vibe to the song. So I do occasionally do that if I don't have space, you know, in the plane for 80 instruments and I have to only bring two.
So I have 2 questions that are about you being a multi-instrumentalist. So I'm going to hit you with back-to-back questions. So the first one is from Stuart Bradley, and he asks, he says, Maiah plays so many instruments so brilliantly, and her music is so creative. I wonder if she would ever see herself writing and recording an instrumental record like Mike Oldfield's Tubular Bells, although she would have to include songs too, so we can hear her amazing voice. So yeah, there's a question.
The really, really long instrumental.
So you currently have, like, volume 4 is 3 songs with vocals and then a bunch of instrumentals. So I don't know if that's kind of what he wants and it's already there, but
no, I mean, that is a really specific thing. Yeah, I'll come back to that later because it was a very specific project. But I think I've definitely been writing more instrumentals, and I think I would do it. And I've actually been contemplating the idea of maybe doing a score piece for a film and scoring a film and seeing how that goes. And I just love making music in all forms, so I'm open to it. I have a hard time justifying making a song that long unless I can really make it interesting, though. Like I feel like I'd have to really feel like the song was worth listening to for 20 minutes. You know what I mean?
That is true. So the other question that has to do with instruments from Dallas Lewis Hollins. Dallas asked if you had the ability to learn any instrument proficiently overnight, what instrument would that be? And what's the first song you would play in front of a crowd? She has a silly follow-up question I'm going to ask after you answer that. So what instrument would you choose if you could learn it overnight? And then what song would you play on that instrument? These are
Cello.
tough questions.
Cello for sure. That one's easy for me. I've been wanting to learn the cello for so long. And then what song would I play on it? I don't know. Ooh. Anything and everything, but this is so weird. This is the first thing that's coming to my brain. There's a cover that this girl does on YouTube of Gangster's Paradise, but it's with a violin, but she loops it and she loops the violin. I don't think I could pull it off, but that's the first thing that comes to my head is like,
yeah, but you'd be proficient. Like you'd be proficient at this instrument overnight.
Yeah. I'd do something cool like that. I would find some like cool, unique cover and use a looper and do a huge string arrangement with one cello that just sounded amazing. That's what I'd want to do.
So I'm going to ask her follow-up question in a second, but you've made my job easy because you allow me to segue into Fearless Girl in 2019. You're talking cello. This is with the Portland Cello Project. So, I mean, man, you're making this just flow, which is awesome. So we'll dive into Fearless Girl in a second, but her follow-up question is, what TV character would you pick to have as a roommate?
Ooh.
There's some like, I have a whole, okay, there's so many fan questions and 5 questions are so strange that I lump them together and I just say, okay, here's 5 strange questions. I'm just going to rapid fire through them. So that is not the strangest of the questions. What TV character would you pick as a roommate?
That's really hard. Right now I'm watching Gilmore Girls. So maybe Rory Gilmore. Feel like she'd be a very easygoing roommate. But I feel like if I could pick anybody, I should pick somebody really exciting and weird, just so I could like experience some sort of strange, exciting life vicariously through this person.
Like Walter White from Breaking Bad or something?
Yeah.
Just as drug kingpin as a roommate. You'd make a lot of money.
Dangerous, yeah.
You might not live to spend it.
Yeah. I don't know. My brain is not thinking clearly because like the only other thing that's coming to my brain is SpongeBob SquarePants, which is not who I'd want to have as a roommate. But those are the last 2 things that I watched was SpongeBob and Gilmore Girls.
If you could have 2 roommates, that's who it would be. So Fearless Girl 2019, we mentioned this is with the Portland Cello Project. The strings sound amazing. How did you become involved with that crew?
Yeah, it was actually, I first moved to Portland and I was a big fan of Portland Cello Project and just reached out on Instagram actually. And Doug, who was sort of running the Instagram at that time, actually saw my message and I think I sent Haunted Song and something else. And which is funny because like I look back at Haunted Song and I think, oh, this is such a weird little song. But it was that song that caught Doug's attention because it was different and sort of unique and you know, and just caught his ear as something that he enjoyed. And I pitched working with them and he actually took me up on it and he came over and we met each other and talked about possibly working together. And then like a year later, I was invited to go on a tour with them and we did a short tour just through the Northwest and they did their show. And during the show, I think we did like 5 songs with me singing. And a few of them were my original songs. I keep accidentally thumbs upping this video.
I mean, there's worse emojis, so I'm okay with that.
But it was just really exciting, and that's how we started working together. And it was an incredible tour. It's my first time doing a big tour like that with bigger venues and performing my original songs with that many cellos and an incredible drummer and bass player and just a full band like that. It was so amazing and one of the most incredible moments of my career. So I feel really excited about it. And then they came and retracked their arrangement for Fearless Girl.
That's amazing. So same year, 2019. So you won a big songwriting contest. So it allowed you to perform at the 50th anniversary of Apollo 11. And there was this homecoming dinner at the US Space and Rocket Center. This sounds pretty wild. That ties in with your 2020 song, Show the World. So can you talk about those two things together?
Yeah, so 2019, like I said, I've entered a lot of song contests, and there was this one that was, it was to write a song about space exploration to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the moon landing. And like, there was incredible prizes. It was like you got to go perform at the anniversary gala at the Space and Rocket Center. You got to record at Fame Studios. You got $10,000. I was like, this is incredible. And there wasn't a lot of people entering at that point, and so I sort of contemplated entering. I was super busy at that time and wasn't sure if I was going to enter, but then I decided I would, and within like 3 minutes I had written that song, and just sort of plopped out of me, and and then we recorded it. Like an hour later we recorded the entry video, and I entered, and then they did a bunch of voting rounds and all this other stuff, and eventually I ended up winning. And it was incredible. It was such a fun trip. And Huntsville, Alabama is like this awesome town. It's a little blue dot in a red state, and it's like there's the Space and Rocket Center, and full of engineers and rocket scientists, and awesome nerdy music people. And it was really fun, and just an incredible experience to get to play that song for astronauts and rocket scientists, and it was just really cool. So yeah.
I read Chris Hadfield, the astronaut. I read his book. What's it called here? An Astronaut's Guide to Life. And we're talking about the impossibility of just being alive. Man, the impossibility of surviving in space. In this book, it's like, even though they're there's only so many astronauts, period, you're such a minority, and it's like an impossible thing to do. These are the best people in the world, these astronauts that go to space, and just everything is going wrong all the time. Like
it's terrifying.
Like they're ready, and the equipment's ready, and the shuttle's ready, and they've been training for decades, and here's their chance. And it's, no matter how much you prepare, it's every moment there was something like, oh, this screw just starts unbolting on its own, and the heat is actually more than they thought it would be. And this, like, it's so insane that they go up and they somehow make it back, because even with a successful mission, it's like everything is going wrong, and they're just troubleshooting to stay alive the entire duration that they're out there. So anyways, that's my tie-in with space travel, was reading his book. And he's a good Canadian, an astronaut that we're proud of here. So we talked about Show the World 2020, two other songs in 2020, the Valley Song and Lift. 2020 is the start of this pandemic. What were the challenges when it came to writing, recording, and releasing music during a global pandemic?
Yeah, so I actually weirdly had a really good year that year for music. So Lift was a song that I wrote working on set of the Netflix show Trinkets. And they ended up putting it in the second season, I think. But it's inspired by that show. There's another one that I sort of like wrote inspired by the show, and the genre was sort of more tailored towards the vibe of that show as well. And so the song is actually about friendship and stealing. And it was really cool. It was really cool to get that song placed in a Netflix show. And then the Valley Song is part of a bigger project that I worked on during the pandemic. I was reading the prequel to the Hunger Games that came out that year, or the year before, and it is called The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, and it's full of songs. One of the lead characters is a performer and a songwriter, and they're all just lyrics. And so as I'm reading this book, I'm thinking, wow, I can imagine what this song would sound like if there was actually music to it. And so I started putting out these videos where I dressed up as this character and recorded my arrangements for these songs, and sort of recreated these little scenes in the book. And it's the Hunger Games, so there's tons of people that are reading this book and looking for other people's interpretations of these songs. And so they started to get really popular really fast, and pretty soon people wanted me to do every song in the book. And I think the Valley Song was one of the first ones. I ended up doing 10 of them, I think 10 or 11. And they got super popular, hundreds of thousands of views on YouTube. I like tripled my subscribers on YouTube or more. I went from like
Even Spotify, there's hundreds of thousands of plays on some of
yeah,
these songs.
yeah. And there were 10 more songs, and it was a whole thing because after about a year, I had these songs out. And then Lionsgate acquired the rights to the book and to make it into a film. And then as soon as that happened, they started coming after me and wanted me to take down my videos and my songs, because even though I was writing the music, they acquired the rights to the book and therefore the lyrics, you know. And so it was sort of this gray area of, did I have any rights here? And it was sort of questionable.
So did you have to fully take them down, or they just get demonetized?
So I had to take, they were basically threatening to
legal
report. Yeah, they were threatening, like I got legal letters, and they were threatening to take down, basically get my YouTube channel removed if I didn't take everything down. And I was really sad because I had worked so hard on these videos. It was like a year's worth of work and 10 songs that I had recorded and produced and made these videos. It was a huge project. And it had been really successful. And like in the height of that, I was getting fan mail. I was getting like people who were drawing me as this character and fan art. And it was really crazy and cool. It's sort of like stepping into this huge Hunger Games fandom. And so it was devastating at the time to have to take everything down. And so I made a video telling people what was going on. And I was really upset about it. And I was, you know, I was in tears at one point because it was just so stressful and I felt so helpless. And that video started making the rounds. People were really upset. People started calling Lionsgate and like leaving messages and sending messages to the writer of the book and all of these places. And as soon as that started happening, they changed their tone and were like, okay, well, we're willing to compromise with you. So I got to keep the videos up on YouTube. And I just had to take everything down off of streaming platforms. So the only ones that are left are ones that were public domain. Like the Valley song is a public domain song from like a long time ago. So they don't really have rights to it anyway. Or songs that were already released covers of things. So that's why I put the instrumentals up, because people still wanted to sing along to them and have them on their playlist. So it felt like a way to sort of keep the songs up in some way, even if it wasn't exactly how I wanted to keep them up. But they're not really instrumentals, you know what I mean? They're almost like karaoke tracks for these songs for people, and that's why they're up there right now. But the film is about to come out, I think, later this year. They did make the movie and all this stuff. There was a petition for me to be this character. It was a whole thing. It was like 2 years.
And is it just one movie, or is it a trilogy like the Hunger Games? Or maybe there's more than 3, but there was 3 books for the Hunger Games.
Yeah, I think this is supposed to be a one-off thing. They said they were only going to make one movie, but it's a huge book.
Yeah, until it makes $1 billion, and then there's 2 more in the pipeline.
Yeah, so I'm really curious to see how the movie turns out, what they do with the songs, if they're similar to the arrangements I did, or if they're vastly different. I'm a little sad about it. I'm sad that the movie's coming out because it was such a, you know, a whole dramatic thing. But that's what that whole thing is, and that's what Lucy Gray is the name of that character. So, yeah.
I was curious because there's you've done volumes 1 through 4 with this Lucy Gray project. Is that correct?
Yeah. Okay. So you can still see all the songs on my YouTube channel, but they've been taken down off of. Most of them have been taken down off of Spotify, and there's just these sort of weird instrumentals left.
Yeah. So there's volumes 3 and 4, I believe, are still available on Spotify.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I was gonna ask who this character was, Lucy Gray Baird. So yeah. I started. I'm like, who is this, and why is someone dedicating like 4 albums to this? And then when I searched, it came up as Hunger Games. And I have a confession. Are you ready for this confession?
Yes.
So I'm a voracious reader. Like I'm reading all the time. And back in the day, so when the Hunger Games came out, there was 3 series at that time that were huge. There was the Hunger Games, there was Twilight, and there was 50 Shades of Grey for a certain market. And anything that's that big, like these books sold like 20 million copies, 100 million, 300, like just insane, biggest series of all time with Harry Potter. So anything that's that big and that universally big I read because I want to know what the fuss is about. So I read the Hunger Games trilogy, and it was the best of all those series. It was actually
It's
really
very
good.
good.
So that's my confession to our listeners, that I read all three Hunger Games and I really enjoyed them when I read them.
I think you'll like The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. It's a little different style wise, but it's a prequel. So it's sort of, it follows one of the first Hunger Games and basically Snow's origin story, and how he got to be the person that he is. It's pretty interesting. I liked it a lot.
All right, all right, all right. So you on I think it's volume 4. So there's a Civil Wars cover. So it's Taylor Swift and Civil Wars, so Safe and Sound, which is a great song. What's awesome, so I'm a big Civil Wars fan. I also like Taylor Swift, but I'm a big Civil Wars fan.
Me
And
too.
what's funny is that song, even though it's like it's Taylor Swift who's the big star, that song sounds more Civil Wars than it sounds Taylor Swift. Like I feel like
It's
that was
one
a
of my
gift from
favorites.
them. Like, okay, Taylor, you can, here's
Yeah.
like the greatest song, and you can be the main voice and we'll do the incredible harmonies.
Oh,
It's
it's
so good.
so good. And actually, so John,
The male singer.
the male singer from Civil Wars, was actually one of the judges for the Music from the Moon contest that I won, which is like this weird, like full
ties
circle moment,
ties it all
little
together.
tie. Yeah. But I love Civil Wars so much. They're just the haunting harmonies. It's the darkness that
The
gets
darkness.
you.
Yeah, yeah. Once it's in you, it's in you forever. So I saw the Civil Wars live in Toronto back when they were
Ooh,
together. Like it breaks my heart that they're not
I
together, even though
know.
Joy's solo stuff is incredible. Her music,
Yeah.
her latest album, it might be like 2018, so it's not super new, but the last album she put out was incredible. So Civil Wars live is like a master class in harmonies, because
Mm.
it's not just like she sings one note and then he does a harmony, or he sings and they're constantly moving their harmonies, and it's this weird dance of vocals that somehow they never hit wrong notes through the
Yeah.
chaos. And I, I had a question about your harmonies. Like a lot of your songs have great harmonies. Does hearing harmonies and singing harmonies come easy to you, or is that something you've had to work on over the years?
Ooh, I think it honestly, it feels like it's hit or miss depending on the day. It's really weird. But being in choir and singing in a choir helped me a lot with harmonies, especially early on. Um, but I find I often resort to finding the notes that I want to harmonize with through the piano as I'm recording, or figuring out harmonies. Sometimes it just comes naturally as I'm working in the song, but it really depends on the song and the key that I'm working in. I found that a lot of the Envy of None songs were really challenging melodically, because they're doing a little bit more complex chords, and finding the notes that felt like they fit without conflicting too much was a little bit more challenging there. So it really depends, I think, on the song
So are
and
you
the day.
saying you can look at the piano and you can find that, oh, my main vocal line is this note, and then you can look at the piano and see what notes would work with that, like just with your
Yeah,
understanding
and
of the
sort of
piano?
feeling, yeah, exactly. And so
What a
sort of
good
like
tool to have, eh?
right. The piano is the best because it's you see all of the notes on a piano, and so it's really just, you can find the key that you're in. If you're familiar enough with it, it's easier to sort of map out, and then you can play and try out different chords and different harmonies and see, oh, this would sound nice here, and this makes the most sense with that chord and within that chord structure. Yeah, it helps so much.
So you do a lot of great covers. What would you say are your top 3 favorite covers to perform?
Ooh. I do a cover of Paranoid by Black Sabbath on the banjo. That's very fun. And always surprises people.
I'm surprised I
Um,
haven't even heard it. So
yeah, so I think that's one of my favorites. I do a cover of Creep. I have a video from a few years ago, but I've grown and gotten better, and
are
the
you
way
on
that I do it
acoustic or
now.
piano for that, or?
I play ukulele for it, usually electric ukulele, and I'll put it through like
And you can get the
some effects.
necessary angst out with
Oh yeah, yeah.
okay,
Lots of
cool.
angst. It's a very different kind of cover of the song, but I have an electric oil can ukulele that I can get some distortion on as well. So
Do
it
you
really
drop the
depends.
do you drop the F-bombs on it, or do you censor
I
yourself?
do. Well, it depends on the show. I
Yeah,
always
the
giggle
coffee
when I
house for
do
kids, you're
it.
dropping the
Yeah.
F-bombs. All right, kids.
Yeah.
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 Okay, so that's two. Is there a third song you can throw in there?
Mm.
We had Paranoid, we have Creep. Would you say Safe and Sound? Or maybe live you don't have the harmonies, so it doesn't
I
the
do.
same.
I have quite a few different covers. I have a cover of Dreams by Cranberries, but also Dreams Fleetwood Mac. Both of those are really fun. Um, but I also just learned I do Just What I Needed by the Cars in a different way that is more sort of angsty, heartfelt version of that I have fun doing. But I also just learned a cover of Drive by the Cars and recorded that. And that was really fun. Ooh, and Heart Shaped Box,
Nirvana.
Nirvana. Oh, that's a really fun one to do. It's so moody and dark. Okay,
You
that's all.
said you said Drive. I thought you were going to say by Incubus, which is
Oh,
a great
that
acoustic
would be
song.
awesome.
Yeah, I have a very quick random story about the Cranberries. So when I was at Metalworks, they recorded their big album in 1994, No Time to Argue, I think, the one that had Zombie on it that sold, I don't know,
Mhm.
20,
Oh,
25 million
so good.
albums. So they did that back in the day, but then after, I don't know, 17 years of not releasing music, they made a new album before she passed away at Metalworks. And my background's in audio engineering and more
Yeah.
marketing and business and that stuff. And one day, like we had good cameras at Metalworks in case you need to take pictures and document things. And one day, I just get told the Cranberries are here. They need a photo shoot. Here's a camera. So I'm a musician. So I have an experience of spending like an hour or two with the Cranberries taking pictures as a photographer. So I don't know if the pictures were used anywhere, but
That's
that's my
crazy.
experience with the Cranberries. Yeah, I have no experience, zero
Were you
experience.
stressed out?
Oh, I guess it was what it was. So I just had fun with it, like making sure that they were, you know, calm and entertained and enjoying their afternoon. But I don't know what the pictures turned out like, but
That's
they never,
crazy.
the studio never asked me to take pictures again. So maybe that's the answer to how the pictures turned out. So anyways,
Maybe
that's the
they're
Cranberries.
amazing. Maybe they're somewhere in like,
Maybe I'm like famous somewhere that I don't know
yeah, you
about.
don't know that those pictures could be amazing. I bet they turned out
Let's just assume they're amazing because nobody's seen them, so we don't know. The only way to follow up that ridiculous story is by asking you the list of just strange questions that were sent in. Are you ready to rapid
good.
fire
I'm ready.
through? I don't know who
Yes,
your
rapid
fans are,
fire.
but they are ridiculous. So I am going to just say all five, so you together you can see how weird this is, and then
All
you
right.
can answer them. So all five, here we go. Ian Bennett asks, if you had a baby goat as a pet, what would you name it? Heidi Elise Dubose asks, what is your favorite shape? Ricky Chan asks, do you like microtonal music? Which I had to Google what that was. Hal Bradenberg asks, what is your favorite national park? Not super strange, but a little different. And then Jordan DeClote asks, okay, brace yourself for this one. If you were to be a roll of duct tape in a bag of ideas, would it be a paper bag or a plastic bag? And how big would the roll of duct tape be? That's from Jordan. So those are your five questions. So let's go through them quickly. If you had a
Okay.
baby goat as a pet, what would you name it?
Um,
Wilfred.
curmudgeon.
Curmudgeon. What is your favorite shape? I mean, a perfect circle is the only answer here, but go ahead. What is your favorite shape?
Rhombus. Or the shape of a smile. Or the shape
Sorry, what was the
that
first thing you said? Grombus?
rhombus.
Rompus. Okay. Okay, that makes sense. You can't just make up shapes. Okay. Do you like microtonal music? Do you know what that is? Because I didn't.
Yes, I've been listening to it. I don't know if I like it, but I find it intriguing.
While Googling what it was, there was a list that showed the 7 most famous microtonal songs. And there's like a Dua Lipa song in there. There's Jet, Are You Gonna Be My Girl? There's a few
Really? That's
famous songs that they
microtonal?
go, oh, it's actually microtonal. I didn't even know what that was. Favorite national park or park? I don't know.
Ooh, glacier.
Okay. If you were a roll of duct tape in a bag of ideas, So would you be rolling around in a paper bag or a plastic bag to start with? Probably paper. You're being
Paper for
environmentally
sure.
friendly. Okay.
Paper, yeah.
And how big would your roll of duct tape be with all those ideas in there that you want to stick to
It'd be
you?
a thick roll of duct tape for sure. A chunky roll of duct tape.
This isn't a leftover, sad looking roll of duct tape.
No.
This is a brand new, like you got to take the plastic off it
Yeah.
first.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. We made it through those questions. There's still a lot of fan questions, but none of them are ridiculous. So, rumor has it, new solo album has an August 12th release date. Is that correct?
Hopefully. We've had a lot of, like, in the past few months, I've been going through a ton of changes and a lot has been happening. But if all goes according to plan, yes. And I'm very excited for it.
So we have a question about that album from Patrick Dixon. He says, I'd like to ask Maiah about her upcoming album. What she's been working on personally and what is she excited about? So I guess if you want to share anything about what fans can expect on the new album.
This album is very close to my heart. I've been working on these songs. It's actually, I feel like this album really captures a journey in my life. One of the songs I wrote when I was 16 and one of the songs I wrote just a few months ago. And it's sort of, I've been through a lot in this time frame, and recently got out of a situation that was really hard. And so it's sort of, to me, almost like a chapter in a book. It's sort of really captures the journey that I've taken over the last 10 years of my life, and works through a lot of trauma and a lot of really difficult things, and gets to the other side of it, which is really cool to me. But it's a very emotional and meaningful record, which I'm very proud of. And this is the first time that I've really self-produced on this level. I produced a lot of the Lucy Gray songs, and then I also co-produced the Envy of None record, where I was recording my own vocals and tracking that and sending that. But this is on a whole nother level, that I'm producing this record, and that's really meaningful to me, especially coming out of the other side of this situation. And it just, I don't know, I'm so excited for it. I'm excited for everything. It's such an eclectic group of songs. There's so many different feelings, and there's darkness, but the album is actually called Out of the Dark. So it's kind of about going through the darkness and coming out on the other side. So I'm hoping that it will be as meaningful to everyone else as it is to me, but I'm just really excited to finally have it out there.
Had you already posted somewhere that it was called Out of Darkness, or was that breaking news?
No, I think is it breaking news? There's people on my Patreon, I think, know that it's called Out of the Dark.
They got to pay for that insider information.
Yeah, that's right.
I had never heard the name of the album, so I feel like they're breaking news for me, or at least our fan base here at the podcast.
Yeah, I'm
that's
very
awesome.
excited.
And do you know how many songs will be on it?
14.
14, okay. Not 8, not 10, 14.
I had to narrow it down to I basically have 2 albums almost ready at this point. So there'll be a follow-up, which I think is going to be called Into the Night, but we'll see. Because I think that might also be the name of something else that I don't want to complete it with. So I might have to come up with a different name. But for now, that's the second album.
All right, there you go. Heard it here first for some people. So we are an hour and 47 minutes in, and we have not talked about Envy of None yet. So I have one fan question, and then we'll do as much Envy of None as we can. So this is from Len Hobbold. I am crushing these names. So Len asks, now that Maiah is in this elevated position with her success, where does she see herself going musically? And would it involve a group, or would it be solo?
That's a good question. I sort of see myself in 3 configurations right now. I have my solo career, writing and recording my own music, and I see myself collaborating with different people that way. But I would still probably tour with a band if I had the opportunity to support my own solo music. And then I have Envy of None, and we're working on our second album right now, which is very fun, very exciting stuff. And that's a different configuration, and I'm excited to see where that goes and what opportunities arise from that, and just the music that we're making. It's very fun. And then I could really see myself working with, I have two music friends in a band called Dreadlight, and we've talked a lot for years about forming a band together that's sort of like I don't know, all female sort of alternative rock indie band.
You've already been featured on a couple of their songs, haven't you?
Yeah, we've collaborated. We have this thing where every Halloween we sort of dress up as the Hex Girls and do a Hex Girls cover, which is very fun. But yeah, they're incredibly talented and my closest friends. So that I could definitely see happening in the future, because I just love it. And I just feel like the door's wide open to see where all of these paths take me. And I like that I have the opportunity to pursue so many different genres and different sort of avenues through music, because I've always been this way. I've always loved everything about music and all these different genres, and I feel very fortunate to have the opportunity to pursue so many different things in different corners of these genres and facets of music. So we'll see where it goes.
Well, you have lots of options moving forward, and it's good to have options. Let's dive into Envy of None. Let's see what we can what ground we can cover here. I have 4 pages of questions, and we'll
go through them fast.
Yeah, we'll get through like 6 questions. But so for the very start of how Envy of None became a thing, how the members met each other, where the idea of starting a band together. So you mentioned that it was winning a songwriting competition that put you in touch with a mentorship prize with Andy Curran. You guys start writing together. And then where does Alex come in, and where does my good friend Alf come in?
Yeah, so Andy and Alf had already been working on this project together for a while. They had a bunch of song ideas. And when Andy and I started, I proposed working together on some stuff, he took me up on the offer and sent me basically tracks that he and Alf had already been working on. And I recorded some vocal ideas, lyrics and stuff, and sent it back. And we had some back and forth for a while. We had like 3 songs we'd been working on. And then he called me one day and was like, hey, so I showed this to my buddy Alex and he loves it. He wants to play some guitars on it. And I had no context.
And you're like, who's Alex?
Yeah, right. Yeah, because I didn't have any context. And then he's like,
Alex.
Yeah, it's the Alex. And then my mind was blown. And like, because at that point I still was really naive as to who Andy was too, because when I had researched him, it just said that he worked for this A&R company. And so I thought he was mostly an industry guy. Like I thought I was just working on music with an industry guy, I didn't really realize.
Yeah, because he was with Anthem Records, which is Rush's label.
Right.
Yeah, but he also has all this success with Coney Hatch and Juno. Like Canada's Grammys are the Junos, and he's an award winner. Yeah,
he's a Juno Award winner. He's part of Coney Hatch. He's incredibly talented musician, and so I was just completely naive to the whole thing. And so when he told me on the phone, do you know Alex Lifeson from the band Rush? Which obviously I did, but especially like I had been listening to Rush my whole life, partially because my parents are huge Rush fans. Like they've gone to so many Rush concerts. And so that was especially crazy and mind-blowing for me in that moment. I was so confused how A went to B. And then, of course, over time, I got the whole story, got to know everybody better. And that's really how that started. And obviously Andy has known Alex for so long and they're good friends. And I think that they had sort of wanted to work on a project together for a while, and this just seemed like a good one to try and collaborate on. And it was so fun. And then Alex brought me in on a different song collaboration that he had been working on with Marco Miniman around that time too, called Lover's Calling, and that was really, really fun. And I've loved working with those guys. It's been amazing.
And most of that stuff, because they're in Canada, you're in the US, there's a global pandemic. Most of it was recorded remotely for everyone mostly. And the first time you actually met the rest of the guys, was it the Ongoing History of New Music? There was the interview where they brought in the whole band for an interview. Was that the first time you guys met in person?
It was the second time. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we did get to meet one time while we were working on the album. I came to Toronto and we did record a couple songs at Orange Studios. Um, and that's where we did the interview later on too.
With Alan Cross?
Yeah,
Okay.
with Alan Cross. And so a couple years prior, I came to Toronto for like 5 days. We recorded a couple songs there. Everything else I recorded at home, but just for that trip, we recorded a couple songs, got to meet everybody in person, and it was fun. We had some really delicious food and just had fun. But then the second time we saw each other in person was, a few years later. We had a whole album recorded and released, and we were there just to listen and have fun and do some interviews and enjoy the music that we had created, which was really cool.
To show how deep Andy Curran goes in the Canadian music industry, as I'm doing my research for Alf's interviews, and he comes up obviously with all the Envy of None stuff. And then in a different interview, so there's a band in Canada called Big Sugar that's gone platinum many times, gone gold many times, like a staple. They're like one of like the Tragically Hip. They're like one of Canada's favorite bands. And I had their singer, Gordie Johnson, who's a Canadian guitar god, a guitar legend. And while I'm doing the research, Big Sugar's signature song that everyone knows is called Dig in a Hole. And I've known this song since I was a kid. My dad used to play this song. And as I'm looking, it was written by Andy Curran. And I reach out to Andy. I'm like, Andy, you wrote this? He's like, yeah, it was him and someone else had written it. And then I guess Gordie Johnson got a hold of it and put his spin on it. It's like one of the most famous songs in Canada. So all these things, I didn't even know how far Andy goes back with success.
No, he's like
Canada.
Always there, sort of like behind the scenes.
Every few interviews, as I'm doing my research, Andy comes up as like, oh, he played bass on this, or he co-wrote this. I'm like, who is this guy? So
yeah.
So it's pretty awesome. You were mentioning being a Rush fan, and then you end up working with Alex. We have one Rush question from Omar. Omar Alvarado. He asked, "Have you ever thought about covering a Rush song?" I mean, it's hard to do
yes,
solo. But...
I have. I've thought about it. I think I was thinking about it for a while. Obviously, yes, it'd be incredibly hard to do just in general for any musician, especially solo. I'd have to do a different take on something. There's a few that I've sort of considered. Some of my favorites, like The Pass or Kid Gloves, Tears, or
these are like deeper cuts. You're not naming like Closer to the Heart or like YYZ.
No.
Like the
well, I just don't feel like
ones.
I could do those ones justice. I feel like there's these other songs that I hear something that I feel like, oh, I could do something with that in my own way, do my own spin on it. Because I feel like you're never gonna out Rush. You know what I mean? Like, you're never gonna do Rush better than Rush, but I can definitely do something different with it. And if it's something that I connect to, like those 3 songs especially, I feel like there's something about it that like just moves me in a different way, and I feel like I could do something with that and make it maybe more acoustic, or do something with it where it would do justice to the song, hopefully.
So Envy of None's debut album comes out, the self-titled debut album comes out basically exactly a year ago. What thoughts, memories, emotions come back to you now when you think back to the album that kickstarted this wild journey you're on? Like, this is different than the solo stuff, this is something else of its own.
It was very exciting. I remember being mentioned in Alex's interview with Rolling Stone, and he had this quote about how he said I was really fucking special in Rolling Stone, which was like the coolest thing ever. And it just like it was so Alex, it was he's building me up and in one of the biggest publications ever. And I remember that being such a surreal moment, like looking on my phone and reading this article with my name in it. And I remember being incredibly overwhelmed by this press that we're getting. I'd never worked with a label like that before. Obviously, there's a lot of people interested in what this album was going to sound like. I remember being incredibly nervous because, anytime you're releasing music with somebody at that caliber, it draws a lot of attention, and a lot of these people are huge fans of Rush, and what we're creating is very different, you know. And so I was very nervous on one level to just see what the reaction would be, if people liked it, if people would hate it. And I was a little scared. I remember being scared, but overwhelmingly the reaction was very positive. You know, there's definitely people who didn't like it, but there's always haters no matter what you do and what you're creating. But it's been incredibly positive, and the feedback we've received has been so good, and we've had so much fun with it. And overall, it was just really exciting and fun.
So there were 3 singles released. So we have Liar, Look Inside, and then the double single Enemy / You'll Be Sorry. I have a question here. So Arthur Elias asks, with each person of the band collaborating in tandem as the song is composed and recorded, how does your amazing producer Alf manage all the different pieces to put them together and create something incredibly spectacular? So a shout out to Alf. What does Alf bring to the table in the studio? He's like long before Envy of None, he's like one of Canada's most successful recording engineers. He's worked with a who's who of artists, not just Canadian artists, but global artists that have sold millions and millions of albums.
Alf is incredible. Not only is he just the glue that makes it all work and puts everything together, he's incredibly talented as a musician and a songwriter as well. A lot of the instruments that you hear in these songs are his, and the guitars as well. And that's something that I know Alex has talked a lot about appreciating about Alf, because he'll do these really great guitar parts, and then Alex can really focus on textures and layers in addition to these other things that are already there. But Alf is a huge part of this project, and a very, very important part of this project. And he takes all of these layers and manages them. He's had to manage all of the different sample rates that we're all recording at, especially for the first record. I was recording at 96, Andy's recording at 44.1, Alex is recording at 48. He's having to take all of these, make it all work. He's having to adjust any issues that come with that. It's just a total, you know, mess of pieces that he's having to put together. And he's made it all work and made it sound amazing. And yeah, Alf, I can't say enough good things about him. He's amazing, and he's a sweetheart.
Such a sweetheart. What's funny is, you know, Rush's fans are some of the most diehard fans of all time. Like they're so diehard, and you know, any criticism you heard about the album wasn't that, oh, the songs weren't good or anything like that. It's like, where are the guitar, you know, solos or that kind of stuff, right? They're expecting like vintage Alex Lifeson guitar solos, or I don't know what it is. But what's funny is you heard a little bit of that criticism at the start, and then Guitar Player names it number 8 on the best guitar albums of 2022. And it's like, what if there's no guitars on there? How is it one of the best? So when, you know, I listen with great headphones over and over again to the album, and being able to talk to Alf about what's going on and all that, there is so much guitar. It's just layered, and it's adding texture, and it's things in reverse. And you have an actual Alex Lifeson guitar solo on one of the songs as well. So it's like, there's so much guitar, but it's used as almost like something in the studio, like an extra, I don't know how to explain it. It's like people use a keyboard for extra feeling, right, or sounds, textures, or vibes. Yeah,
it's really incredible, because there are so many guitar layers in those songs that don't sound like guitars. They sound like synths and keys and strings, and you have no idea what you're listening to, but it's weird and different, and it's a guitar. And what he's able to do is just incredible. I don't know how he does it, but it's amazing. And there really are so many guitars in that album, but you just would never know it. And I think it's just so cool.
And that's a part of why it would be so hard to play the album live, right? Because it's such a dense sounding album because of all the layering. Alf was saying that would be one of the challenges, is if you're going to play live, you want it to sound great, and you don't want it to sound thin. And you guys would have to really figure out how to thicken everything live. Is there some truth to that?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I mean, when you're working in a studio, like we were working through the pandemic on these songs, and we had all the time and the tracking space in the world to add layer upon layer upon layer upon layer. And I did that vocally too, just so many vocal layers on these songs. And it's the same with the guitars and the synths and the basses. Like Andy like triple layered his bass on Look Inside or something like that, and he's got that really gritty, and it sounds kind of like a guitar. It's so funny. It's like sometimes Andy's basses sound like guitars and Alex's guitars sound like keys, and it's just like we're just it's such a maze of confusing trickery that's happening on these records. But it would be really hard, I think, to figure out how to do it live without either using some sort of backing tracks or hiring a lot of people. But I would say the same listening to Rush, and then they somehow made it work with 3 people. So if anyone's going to figure it out, it's Alex.
That's very true. So on Spotify, which is where I go to listen to music, Liar is the most popular song. It has just under 500,000 plays. Why do you think people love that song so much?
I think it's just really catchy, and it has that almost garbage,
the electronic
grungy
sound,
rock, electronic sound. And that was one that Andy had pretty much written completely. I rewrote some of the lyrics, but that's like classic. Andy has a really good sense for hooks and like those sort of things that really just grab your attention and that you want to keep listening to over and over again. And so I credit that to Andy mostly. For he had already written that song, and they had a different vocalist on it, and then they sent it to me, and I was like, yeah, I like this a lot. And I changed up some of the words, but it was basically the same, and changed up a few of the melody parts, but that was one that he had basically already had completed.
Did you say go ahead and delete that other person's vocal track? I got this.
Yeah.
Get that person out of here. Yeah, hit the mute button. I got this.
Yeah. No, she was great too. It was a really good vocalist. Just different style, a little bit harder, but I have that very sort of like soft tone to my voice. And she was a little bit more like poppy, a little bit harder rock pop kind of vibe, which was also really fun and really great. But yeah, I think it did fit really well in the record. So I'm really glad that they let me do some vocals on it and add it on there, because it turned out really good, and it's one of my favorites on the album.
So you kind of answered this next question, but I have to ask anyways to give the fan a shout out. So Mark Irwin asked, how did Andy influence the direction of the album? And then the second part, how often did Alex make you laugh? So is Alex known as being a funny guy?
Andy influenced, Andy is really the core of all of this. These songs, most of them started with him. And then he and Alf are sort of like, they say they share a brain, they work on a lot of these things together. So they're really where the seed starts. And then I'll add things and Alex will add things. And Alex and I, a lot of times, will sort of riff off of each other with harmonies and layers. And, but it's really the root of everything is Andy. And he, like you're saying, he's such a prolific songwriter. He's really great with hooks. I think he really has a good ear for those catchy melodies and catchy instrumentals. Like a lot of times he's sending me instrumental beds that are really cool. I just started working on one last night, and they just immediately grab your attention. They have that such a specific energy and vibe. And then he has usually a few lyric ideas or hooks, in there. And then I'll sort of work around that, add lyrics, change certain lyrics. And I sort of come in as adding vocal melodies, harmonies, and lyrics, and as a lyricist in there. But he's really the start of everything is Andy and Andy's roots.
Speaking of Andy, knowing how to write a good hook. So my favorite songs on the album are Never Said I Love You, Liar, and Old Strings. So you got some good hooks between those songs. What was it like hearing your songs on the radio for the first time? Maybe some of your solo stuff had radio play, but at least for the Envy of None stuff, what was it like after all those years and all that hard work and writing the songs, they finally come out and there's radio play there?
It's very exciting. It's very exciting to honestly, like the biggest, because I feel like radio is I feel out of touch with radio now because of Spotify and all of these other platforms that have sort of overtaken radio in a lot of ways. So it's very exciting to know that this was still getting radio play in so many different countries. And I think the milestone for me that really was huge to me was knowing that we charted on the indie charts, I think in 3 different countries. And that was a huge deal to me. Like I like, for me as an independent artist, always have seen charting as like, you made it. If you're charting, you made it, you know. So knowing that we were on, you know, the Billboard charts for however long was really, really exciting to me. But also getting radio play. I know I was getting radio play for a few of the Envy of Men songs just in my hometown in Missoula, Montana. And all of that is
That's
just
how you know
really,
you've made it, is when
yeah,
Missoula, Montana is playing you. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So it did felt really good.
So I have a question from Jerry Schramm. Who is your dream collaborator? Like if you could collaborate,
Ooh,
probably like Nora Jones or someone who, if you could
uh,
sit down with one person to collaborate.
it's so hard to pick one person. Maybe Florence Welch, maybe honestly, right now I've been listening to Boy Genius, which is
The
Phoebe
three
Bridgers
girls.
and yeah, Lucy Dacus and Julian Baker. And they just they have such rock star energy and they just seem like such cool people. Like right now, if I could pick anybody to collaborate with and just like I would join their super group in a heartbeat.
Yeah, so I mentioned that every year I have my list of the best albums of the year. So Phoebe Bridgers, Punisher, I think it was 2020. I had that on my list. It's probably my number one album of whatever year it came out. I think it was 2020.
Mhm.
And so far, you know, we're a few months into the year. I haven't had any albums that have really stood out to me. And then I see on Metacritic that this Boy Genius album is one of the most acclaimed albums of the year so far. And I didn't know the name Boy Genius, but I love Phoebe Bridgers. And it's basically all I've been listening to for like 4 days. And it's the only album I have so far on my best of 2023 list.
Ooh,
So I agree with you. And for some
yeah.
reason, you know, normally it's like the start of albums are the strongest songs and the singles. I keep repeating the final 3 songs on the album. Something like
Mm-hmm.
something about I love you, how I know I love you, or whatever. That one
Yeah.
and the next 2. So the final 3, I just infinite repeat, can't stop listening to them. So I'm with
Oh,
you here
that's
with
so
Boy
good.
Genius.
Yeah.
Hey,
Uh,
if you could join them, I would support the cause. Yes.
yeah, I'll play any instrument that you want. Okay. If any of you are listening out there.
I'll get this out to Phoebe Bridgers and then I'll
Yeah,
get her as
yes,
a guest
please.
on the show. Um, so you were in the music video for Look Inside and it turned out great. It looks amazing. Again, there's like a thickness to it, like whatever they're
Yeah.
using for cameras, and it looks amazing. Great song, all that
Hmm.
stuff. What was that experience like? That must be the first like big budget music video.
Yeah, it was very exciting. I am totally blanking on the cinematographer. But we filmed it in Toronto actually. When I was there, when we were there for the interviews, we just went and did it. It was actually pretty guerrilla style. It was just me, and then Andy was there for moral support, and
And a
we didn't have
couch.
like a huge crew. Yeah, and then a couch, but it was this basically this location that was set up for photographers and filmmakers, and you could rent it out, and it had all these different rooms with different looks. And so it was actually it was really cool. It was not a huge budget, and it turned out Jaden is the cinematographer, and he did an incredible job. He had really good ideas. He sort of um, made plans at this location, you know, staked everything out and was ready. And it was just fun. We didn't really have any specific plans other than we've got cool locations. And then I got some cool outfits, and we had a makeup and hair person that maybe looked like a classic pinup girl. And then we had that sort of like cool windswept businessy persona. And that actually, the jacket I'm wearing in that shot, um, I got to borrow this like super nice Prada jacket. Um, and it was like $19,000 or something. It
You're afraid to
scared me just
move
to
in
wear
it,
it.
you know?
I was so afraid to move in it, but it looked so cool. But yeah, it turned out great. And Jaden did such a good job at making it just look so so trippy to sort of match the feeling of the music. And I know that we all sort of had really specific ideas for the music video of how it should turn out and how it should match the vibe of the song. And Jaden did such a good job with all of that. So yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, I thought you guys did a great job of capturing the vibe of not just that song, but also the band and the album. Again, there's just and we'll talk about the album cover. So behind me here, so in your honor, so Envy of None, I got the album cover. This is the wall of fame. So my 12 favorite albums from guests that I've had on the podcast. So back when Alf was on, after the first time, I got that ready for the second time he came on, and now you're on here. And I've been talking with Andy, and I'll get the whole band on eventually in due time, maybe with the new album. So yeah, that's one thing I mentioned to Alf is you guys did such a great job of having a consistent image and vibe through everything, through the artwork of the album, through the lyrics, through the performances, through the music videos, through the art. Just everything is one cohesive vision, and it feels like this was masterminded from the start, that it wasn't you just did things randomly and it worked out. It's like there's like genius behind all of this,
we will take that compliment. But I can't say that everything was meticulously planned. I think it came together as it happened. Really, it was a work in progress. I think originally we were sort of contemplating this very different aesthetic that was more like almost a tattoo kind of font, and similar to some of Andy's other styles with his solo releases. And then eventually we landed on this photo for our album cover. We were looking through some photos from Plastic, this photo shoot that they did, and this photo was the one that we all unanimously agreed was like, it caught our attention, and then that became, it feels like it matches, something about it matches the vibe of the music. I can't quite describe it, but it's kind of spooky, but also engaging and modern, and not modern at the same time. It's just sort of, it matches the vibe. And so since that happened, I think it became easier to sort of visualize everything else and come up with the concept for everything else.
So there's a question about the album cover. This is from Glenn Gibson. He's from the Envy of None fan group on Facebook. So it's Envy of None for Many is the name of that group.
Oh yeah.
And Glenn asks, where did the art concept for the front cover of the album come from? So you mentioned that. Is it you with funky makeup? And then what's on the plate? Burritos? That's his question. So they look like pills to me, but they could also be very tightly wound burritos.
I'm totally going to tell people they're burritos from here on out. I do get asked a lot if I am on the cover, and I'm not. We have yet to figure out who the models are, but I would like to find them someday and send them the album, because I have no idea if they even know that they are our album cover at this point.
Are they for sure real people? Like, to me, they look like they're like artwork, like they're drawn or cartoons.
Right?
Or, do we know it's for sure two models?
It's real people. It's two models. I just think they're incredibly airbrushed and have that very like spooky, perfect aesthetic going on. But they are real models. I have no idea who they are, but someday that's my goal, is to find them and send them a blue burrito, apparently.
Are they supposed to be pills? Like what?
I think yes, they are.
Like you
pills.
Choose one of the two pills. There's a dark pill and a light pill.
Yeah. We haven't come up with the whole lore behind the pills, but they originally were purses. It was an advertisement for a purse company, and it kind of looked like pills already. So we just changed them into pills. To make it a little bit more abstract.
That's too funny. So I'm down to the final page, even though it's it's front and back. It's 2 pages on 1 page. But I'll ask just a few more questions and we'll wrap up. I thought it was important to mention the fundraiser that you guys did for the Ukraine. So if you can share where the idea came from, and my understanding is it's raised over $120,000. Like, this is a significant help. So if you can kind of shed the light on that.
Absolutely. It was definitely a team effort. We were doing a lot of interviews around the time that the war broke out in Ukraine, and it was weighing heavy on a lot of our minds and hearts at that time. It felt kind of weird to be having all of these interviews and doing this press, and to be so concerned about these other things that were happening in the world. I remember Alex a lot of times had Ukraine colors in his video somewhere, whether it was the cables that he put on the counter, or he made a little painting of like the flag of Ukraine and put it in the back of those interview videos. And he was really upset about it. And I was feeling that too. And we had been messaging, and I was like, hey, what if we did some sort of fundraiser? And he immediately jumped on board, and then Alex brought it to Andy, and then Andy brought it to the label, and everybody from that point forward just immediately got on board. And so everybody, the label, the packaging company, the vinyl company, all of that was donated to try to raise money. Everybody, like, it was a huge team effort from so many people and so many parts of that puzzle, because everybody wanted to just do something to help. And it felt really good to do something, especially at that point, because it just felt wrong to be talking about ourselves and having our hearts feel so heavy for all these other people going through something so serious and heavy. And yeah, and we ended up raising, I think, $120,000. And it just felt really good to do that. And the organization, the UNHCR that we donated the money to, they're doing a lot of work with refugees and getting resources to people who are fleeing, and immediate resources to a lot of people. And they're doing incredible work. So they're the people that are doing all of the hard work. So we did the easy part and just gave them money.
Yeah, that might be the most important thing that we do as musicians and professionals, is being able to give back when you're in a position to do so.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel that heavily. I think there's a lot of crossover between doing that kind of work and art, especially. I think it's easy to combo those two and do something good.
So I was able to take the final 2 pages here and get it down to the final 3 questions for Envy of None, and then we'll wrap up. Okay, is that okay?
You're amazing. Totally okay.
I'm doing my best
I've
here, man.
rambled.
I had so many questions. It's not my fault. It's not my fault.
I rambled. We talked about space and the universe, and
we've covered a lot of ground, from the impossibility of being human to the human condition to space to sleep paralysis. We talked a little bit about music too at some point. So yeah, that's good. So 3 final questions to do with Envy of None, and then there's some deeper final questions to wrap up. And there's one final fan question within this. So first question is the new EP from Envy of None. There is officially a title and there's officially a release date. For our listeners that weren't aware of that, can you share that with them?
Yes, we have an EP called That Was Then, This Is Now, that has a new single by the same name on it, as well as songs that were on exclusively the bonus disc. Before that, you only got, if you got the deluxe version of the record, you would get this extra CD that had other exclusive songs like Leafy River and You'll Be Sorry, and remixes of some of the songs. So I'm excited about it, and it's sort of like, to me, it's sort of this, I don't know, it's like a next step towards where the music that we're working on right now. And so I'm excited to have this release out there, and I don't want to spoil it for anyone, but I can't remember what day is it coming out?
So June 9th is
June 9th.
I saw that somewhere, whether it's right on the Envy of None website or one of the boys posted it. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that is correct. So mark your calendars.
So June 9th, and then your album was August 12th. This is going to be a big summer for you.
It is,
or August 14th or somewhere in August.
Somewhere in there.
Whatever. It'll come out at some point. Well, that's exciting. So wait, did you just hint that there's this new EP that is coming out, but that you're already working on new music that goes past this EP?
Yes.
Is this more breaking news? Is that what's going on here?
It's breaking news. Yeah, I don't know what I'm allowed to talk about, but I I have no filter, but yes.
I should ask
Breaking
all my
news.
questions right now then. No, I'll give you a break. I won't take advantage of that. Final fan question. We had a ton of fan questions, so we got to thank all your fans for supporting. So this is from Liam's vinyl blog. So maybe he loves the Envy of None vinyl that was released. He asked, what was it like sharing the studio with Alex Lifeson? And I think I mentioned to him, like, I don't know if they were in the same studio recording, but you were in the same room as him several times. So you could take that question however you want to take it.
Yes, Alex is amazing. Just first and foremost, is an amazing, incredible person, exactly how you would expect him to be. He shows up as his authentic self pretty much everywhere that he is. So if you've seen any interviews with him, that's exactly how he is in person. He's just super kind, humble, silly, really hilarious all the time, thoughtful, smart, and so talented. Just an incredible human being to be around. And he actually didn't want to be in the studio. We did do some recording in Toronto, and Andy and Alf were there, but Alex specifically didn't want to. I think he prefers to record in his own recording space. And he prefers that. And we've talked a lot about it because I do too. And it's nice to have that space to try out ideas, to not have other people influencing your thought process, and to just have that space to really just be a mad scientist and work on things and to be in that sort of
it's a safe zone as well, right?
It is. It's a safe zone. It's distraction free, and you're allowed to sort of, I think you get a lot of times more creative that way because you don't have limitations on time. You don't have limitations on what you're allowed to do or what other people are influencing you to do. And so we've talked a lot about that. And so we didn't really do any studio time together, but sending tracks back and forth was really amazing. And we still inspired each other a lot. He talked about how vocal layers that I did really inspired him in different tracks that he ended up recording, and vice versa. I was really inspired by layers that he would add with the guitar, and then I'd add different vocal layers because of that. And so we had a really nice sort of workflow, sending files back and forth and sort of being inspired by what we were hearing. And overall, he's just incredibly silly and fun. I had a lot of fun just hanging out with him, going to dinner. He's as silly and hilarious as you would imagine he would be. He's just a great person to hang out with.
So I have a hypothetical question for you. So in the distant future, I'm talking in 100 years, in 500 years, in 1,000 years, if there's still humanity going on, let's say most of today's music has been wiped from human history. It's no longer around. However, you're able to keep one Maiah song and one Envy of None song to still be around in that future that people still listen to. What song from Solo and Envy of None would you keep around to best represent you as a solo artist and you as Envy of None? So it doesn't have to be the most popular songs or the biggest hits, but if you could time capsule one of each, what would it be? These are tough. The final questions are the hard ones here, I'm telling you.
That's really hard. Especially because I feel like both Envy of None and this record that I'm working on are very eclectic. There's a lot of different vibes there.
I feel like you're sidestepping the question here.
I am. Okay, if I now
okay,
today,
is it easier if you could choose two of each? Does that make it easier, or is that even harder?
Yeah, two of each. Okay.
Okay.
So if I can choose two Envy of None songs, I would choose Old Strings, because that was one that I had written, and then they sort of added their Envy of None twist to it, and it's very close to my heart, and it has a very specific vibe. And then to go with Old Strings, I think I would choose Liar and Old Strings. And then for my music, I think I would choose Come On as one song, and then this is so hard. I'm gonna say, um, I have this new song called Work of Art, and I'm gonna say that Work of Art and Come On.
And those are both on the new album?
Yeah, they're both gonna be on the new
Well,
album.
that's how you get our listeners excited about the new album. So well played. And Old Strings is my favorite song, period, from Envy of None. So good choice. I'm glad that'll still be there when science keeps me alive in 1,000 years. I'll be able to listen to that. So that is it for the Envy of None questions. That is it for the Maiah solo questions. And there's just 3 final wrap-up questions. Are you ready for
Great.
the big
I'm ready.
finale here?
I'll
Okay,
try to
so
be more concise.
so we have a tradition on the podcast where the current guest leaves a question for the next guest without knowing who it is, male or female, age, profession, what they do. They just put a question up into the ether, and then I ask the next guest. So the question left for you comes from Kevin Young, who's the keyboard player and backing vocalist for the platinum band Moist. These guys were 8 times platinum, one of Canada's biggest bands in the mid 90s and early 2000s. And Kevin's question for you is, what is your practice hack when you have to learn a song or a part quickly? Is there anything that helps you take something in if you got to play a song tonight you've never played before, something like that?
I definitely, I kind of, my hack is to watch other people's covers of that song. I don't know why, but it simplifies it into the most basic sort of
So seeing
components
the
for me.
chords they're playing, and
Yeah, because usually it's
okay.
just like one person and a guitar, and then I can sort of take out all the other noise, all the other instrumentation, and I'm just focusing on somebody else, already distilling all of that into a guitar part and a vocal part. And it makes it easier for me to learn it more quickly.
Okay, and now can you pay it forward and ask a question for the next guest?
Yes, I think my question would be, have you arrived at where you wanted to be?
Okay. Wanted to be. That's a good question. So sometimes I don't know who the next guest is because scheduling changes. So next week, I have the guitarist for the multi-platinum band Big Wreck, who
Ooh.
Canada multi-platinum. They were big in the US, and he joined the band, I believe, in 2018. So it's like he's now a part of this massive band. So we'll see if he believes that he has arrived with all his hard work now in one of Canada's most beloved bands. So that's a great question. 2 final questions, and these are deep. When you look back on your life and career, what are you most proud of, and what are you most grateful for?
Hmm. I think I'm most proud of continuing to try. You know, it's been a hard journey and I've made plenty of mistakes. Um, but despite everything that's happened, I've continued to get up and keep trying and continue on the journey. And so I think I'm most proud of that and the resilience in that. Most grateful for the people. I think everyone who's sort of helped me along the way, people who've let me stay at their houses so I don't have to pay for hotels, people who support me on Patreon or just send me kind words, or come up to me after a show. And I look back on my career and I think it is a huge line of memories of people and faces and kindness and support and love and connection. And I don't think the career that I have would mean anything without people.
Final question. If you could go back in time and you could sit down next to your 10-year-old self and you could whisper words of advice. So you've now had all these years since then of discovery and soul searching and personal growth and challenges and successes and lessons and mentorship, all that stuff. If you could impart words of advice to help cute little 10-year-old Maiah sitting there to navigate her life, what advice would you give?
Ugh, that breaks my heart. I would say no is not a bad word. You're allowed to say no. And you don't have to make people happy. It's not your responsibility to make other people happy. And that you have the power to make all your dreams come true inside of you, and you don't need anybody else to be the best version of yourself.
That might be the best advice any guest has given. I feel like there's a self-help book there that you could write that would help a lot of young girls. So I think that was some great advice. Where can our listeners find you online? So if they've enjoyed the interview and they want to stay up to date with your music, with Envy of None, if maybe they want to follow your journey on social media, maybe they want to reach out and message somewhere to, they want to collaborate, or they, whatever it is, what can you give the fans to stay in touch?
Yes, I'm everywhere under Maiah Wynne, but I'm on YouTube. I've got lots of videos on YouTube that aren't available anywhere else, and songs. But also I've got an email list if you want to join that on my website. I'm on Spotify and everywhere, Instagram, TikTok. I've been trying to be hip with the times, so feel free to follow me there and make fun of me.
There you go. So as we wrap up, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge you for your lifelong pursuit of mastery as a singer-songwriter, as a multi-instrumentalist. I want to take a moment to acknowledge you for the great music that you've written and recorded and released as a solo artist, but also with Envy of None. I'm excited to hear both new albums. There's a lot of stuff in the pipeline, which is awesome. I want to commend you for your charity work. So we touched on the Envy of None charity, but you personally do a lot of charity work as well. And we need people like you that are out there giving back and making the world a better place. And last but not least, I want to thank you for spending the last 2.5 hours. Sorry for how long this went. Thank you for spending the last 2.5 hours with me, answering all my questions, answering all your fans' questions who came out in droves. I learned a lot about you and about Envy of None, and had all these questions answered. So thank you so much, Maiah. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Joelle. You did so much research and you take so much time with your guests, and you're so patient with me with all my technical difficulties, and you're just so sweet and hardworking, and it's easy to see that you put a lot of work into this. So thank you for having me.
Well, thank you, and you're very welcome. So to the listeners of the podcast, to the Maiah fans, to the Envy of None fans, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for sticking with us for the last 2.5 hours, and we'll see you on the next episode. If you've enjoyed today's episode of the podcast, please take a moment to subscribe, like, comment, and share. What I want to know is, who would you like me to sit down with next for a 2-hour deep dive interview? You can let me know by reaching out to me on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Joel Martin Mastery. Joel is Joel. And you can find me on Twitter and Snapchat at Joel Mastery. So I am done. I am complete. I approve this message, and I'll see you on the next episode.